Chapter 101, Date Finale. I guess we could say if we are together, we become lucky to be able to enjoy something like this. James said. Maria tilted her head. I don't know. Tonight's only the first time. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Our profession doesn't believe in coincidences. Before she could reply, the waiter arrived with 2 menus. James closed his without looking. Since we're eating French, I'd like to know what the chef recommends for us. What's his focus tonight? High-end chefs carried their own pride. The waiter didn't hesitate to give his recommendations. Since you've reserved the branzino almondine. As a starter, I recommend the chilled pea soup with crab, fresh and light. It sets the palate beautifully for the main dish without being full. The main will be the branzino almondine you have reserved for the night. And for dessert, a crème brûlée with seasonal berries, a classic touch of indulgence without overpowering the delicate flavors of your main. For the wine pairing, a crisp Sancerre, Loire Valley Sauvignon Blanc, its minerality and citrus cut through the richness of the almond butter and enhance the branzino's flaky sweetness. James glanced across the table. Maria? She gave a nod. Sounds good to me. Cortana, data crosscheck confirms preference. Maria Hill favors foie gras. James took the opportunity with Cortana's suggestion. Could you add the foie gras parfait as part of the starter? The parfait's silken and delicate taste would truly satisfy our palate. The waiter noted it and left. Traditional French meals could run through a dozen courses, but no one wanted that now. Romance required pacing, not gluttony. 4 or 5 courses would be plenty. The sommelier approached with the chilled Sancerre, the bottle cradled in his hand like something fragile. He presented the label for James's approval, then cut the foil cleanly below the lip and eased the cork free with a soft sigh. Placing it on a small silver tray, he offered it forward. James picked it up, rolling the cork gently between his fingers. He wasn't searching for flavor, just for condition. Dry, intact, with no hint of crumbling or seepage, the bottle had been well kept. He gave a slight nod. The sommelier decanted the pale wine into crystal, letting it breathe while releasing its mineral edge. 2 goblets were set, one filled with water to clear the palate. James poured first for Maria, then for himself. To what? He asked, lifting his glass. She thought for a beat. To your work going smoothly. James smirked. Work? In this atmosphere? I'll toast to that. Then to working together. They touched glasses. The wine was crisp, mineral, and bright with citrus, perfectly balanced. He leaned back, eyes on her. So tell me, why this job? Not exactly common for women. Honestly, you look more like you belonged on a fashion runway. Her smile cooled a little. That's a long story. We have time, James said. Dinner hasn't even started. The conversation uncoiled easily after that. Plates arrived one by one, wine glasses touched between them, and Maria talked, careful but genuine. She was proud of her career, though she never lost her guarded edge. James pressed gently on the conversation, listening more than speaking, letting her fill the silence with pieces of herself. By the time dessert was finished, the mood had shifted. She was relaxed, still alert, but enjoying herself. James settled the bill and they stepped out into the Washington evening. He opened the car door for her. She hesitated for a moment before slipping in. Inside, James tested the waters. I spent the afternoon cleaning my apartment. You want to take a look? Could use a second opinion. Her pause was brief. All right. Let's see how good your taste is. Back at his place, James handed her slippers as she stepped in. Not bad, right? A bachelor space. Simple decoration, but it works. The 80-square-meter apartment was stripped down, bedroom, small living room, and compact kitchen. He'd kept it clean, orderly, with nothing left lying around. Maria looked around with a smile. I'm impressed. Didn't think you'd bother to decorate this much. James cut some fruit, poured juice, and set them on the table. She raised an eyebrow. I thought you'd break out the wine. We're agents, James said evenly. I don't believe you to get drunk on duty. Besides, juice is better anyway. That earned him a faint laugh. They sat, talking over the day, trading stories that edged between professional wariness and personal wear. Beneath the polished exterior, Maria showed cracks of fatigue, workload, ambition, the toll of a career lived at constant readiness. James caught it. That was his opening. 18+ scene available on Patreon. The night passed. The morning sun slipped through the curtains. James stirred as the sound of running water came from the bathroom. He knocked gently. "You're up early." Her voice came muffled through the door. "I need to change before work." "You've got the day off. Go ahead and sleep in." No, it's fine, I'll drive you home," James said, already pulling on casual clothes. "You can eat in the car to save time." He moved into the kitchen, stacked a quick set of sandwiches and a carton of milk. When she stepped out, heels in hand, Maria shook her head with a half-smile. "You're too considerate. Whoever ends up with you will be lucky." James smiled faintly. He could hear the subtext. Her focus wasn't on him, it was the job. She was a level 9 agent, Fury's deputy, marked for command of the helicarrier. Career first, everything else second. That was her reality, and he respected it. Strong woman or not, you still need a ride home. "Let's go." They ate in the car as he drove her back. At her building she paused, looking at him. "This stays between us." "Of course." She disappeared inside, leaving James alone with the morning light. Cortana, analysis complete. Subject prioritizes career advancement. Affection present but secondary. Future interaction likely dependent on operational overlap. James didn't answer. He drove off, stomach finally reminding him of its own needs. A fast food joint that offered apple pies and black coffee. He parked, leaned back in the seat, and let the taste fully wake him. Another morning. Another mission waiting just beyond the peace and quiet. Chapter 102, Underground Workroom. James took the day off to settle in his new apartment, walked around the streets for places to eat, and took in the scenery as well as hidden walkways. The next morning he reported early to headquarters. Phil Coulson was already waiting by the entrance. "How was dinner with Hill?" Coulson asked, voice curious. James gave him a look. "And how exactly do you know about that?" "Don't get the wrong idea. Nobody's tracking you. You just happened to invite her the same night I was pulled away. I figured you wouldn't waste the opportunity." James smirked. "All right, you caught me. It was a nice evening, but that's all it was. One night." Coulson nodded. "She's more interested in her career anyway. You'll have to wait a while if you want more than that." "Forget it. I should take a page out of Stark's book. I'm a billionaire now. Life's just starting." Coulson arched a brow. "From what I've heard, you already had plenty of girlfriends before the money." James shrugged. "That was different. I was broke with no room for romance. Now it's another game. Anyway, let's get back to work. Where's my studio?" Coulson led him into the elevator. "The underground factory. It's all yours. You're here for one reason, your genius programming. Same way you built your company. The original system's too clumsy. Too many operators were needed. The helicarrier needs smarter control." "No problem," James said. "But if you want real intelligence, some of the hardware will have to change. Isn't the ship already complete? It can be refitted. This first carrier has to prove itself. Fail here and there won't be a second." The elevator sank to the lowest level. Coulson guided him past the cavernous factory floor. Engineers moved between machines, welders sparked along catwalks, and stacked crates lined the edges. At the far end, he pointed to a sealed chamber. "That's your studio. Alone with no distractions. Technical data on the carrier is in there. If you need parts or staff to help, just ask, but keep your eyes open. If someone balks, they might be Hydra." James nodded. "Got it." He hesitated, then asked, "Where's Captain America? Thought he came back with you." Coulson's smile thinned. "Still adapting to life. 70 years just gone. He's catching up, reading files, absorbing history. Not sure yet if he'll join the Avengers. He needs time." "An old young man," James muttered. "That's an interesting life to have." Coulson clapped him on the shoulder. "Just do your thing." He left James with the studio and closed the door. Inside, James powered up the banks of computers. No Stark-level lab here, no JARVIS, and no automated luxury. Just bare hardware, cooling fans, and lines of code. He set them all running, fingers brushing against a USB port. Cortana, downloading. Surveillance active. Multiple cameras in the room. James glanced at the corners. Not subtle. But fine. We'll play along. His pulse settled into rhythm, body sharpening as Cortana siphoned terabytes of design files. Cortana, extraction invisible. No hardware traces. Organizing data now. Your conscious workload will remain unaffected. Multitasking enabled. James leaned back and flipped through the blueprints on screen. A standard carrier frame with a reinforced deck and a massive weight increase. But the centerpiece was the anti-gravity engines. That's the heart of it, he muttered. Smarter flight controls, or this thing's a tombstone in the sky. Hours passed. His stomach growled before he realized noon had come. How's it going? James asked. Cortana, extraction complete. But system restructuring requires more energy. Current host nutrients insufficient. A potassium core is optimal. I'll handle it at home tonight. Stark left me a few spares. Any mention of exotic metals in the files? Cortana, negative. Standard armor composites. True breakthroughs require restricted S.H.I.E.L.D. archives. Suggest acquiring deeper access. James rubbed his temple. Later. For now, we'll start a smart control program off these machines. But keep a leash on it. I don't want another Ultron situation. Cortana, understood. Preparations are ongoing. Satisfied, James shut the monitors down. He stepped out of the studio and nearly collided with Maria Hill. She smiled, faint but genuine. Came to pick you up. You don't have to eat with the regular agents. Your badge gets you into the real restaurant. That's good news, James said. Though I doubt it'll beat the food from the other night. Of course not, Hill said, eyes flicking briefly toward him. But we can always try again when there's time. Chapter 103, Cold Plunge into an Ice Bath. James and Hill left their understanding unspoken. They could meet when it suited them, but neither brought up feelings. That was how true Americans handled things, and James was learning to adapt. In another life he might have learned sooner, but he'd missed his chance when Stark went off the rails after their first meeting. By afternoon, James was back in his studio. The hum of processors filled the room. He brought up the helicarrier schematics on holographic projectors, tracing command lines from the bridge to critical sections. Cortana, mapping complete. All lines committed to memory. James nodded. Designing a smart system wasn't easy. Earth's intelligence tech wasn't far along yet, not even in this universe. Stark's JARVIS was the best James had seen, but even JARVIS wasn't truly independent. It was an assistant. The real mind behind it was still Stark. James outlined requirements to Cortana. Primary function has to be flight control. Secondary, security. No repeats of the New York incident from the movies. Nobody gets to fire a nuke without the commander's direct order. And combat response needs better coordination. The helicarrier sat idle during the invasion. One archer compromised half a fleet. That can't happen again. Cortana, parameters logged. Requesting long-term memory allocation for persistent monitoring. James let her process while he skimmed through data. Hours passed before his phone buzzed. Kyle Roberts' voice came clear. Boss, qualifiers for the esports competition have begun. The top 16 will move to the finals. Do you plan to attend? Nicely done, James said. Let our cooperation company send people to visit and learn. They will start holding it next year too. Is our esports arena finished? Almost complete. Equipment is being installed. The square is already finished. The entire style matches the game setting. You've done well. I'll attend the finals in person. Send me the schedule. I'll bring Stark with me. Minutes later, a message pinged in. Finals are at night. Championship only. Perfect. James finished the day with dinner at the executive restaurant, then returned home after stopping by a store to buy bags of ice. Cooking alone wasn't an option, not with his schedule. Inside the apartment, he locked the bathroom door, filled the bathtub with water, and dumped the ice. No cameras here, they wouldn't dare to. From a hidden compartment, he drew out a spare potassium reactor. Stark had left him several for contingencies. Tonight he needed one. Cortana, you ready? Ready. Initiating energy transfer. James got naked except for his underwear and submerged into the cold water without whimpering. I'm a man, this is nothing, it's just cold water, hoo-ah, hoo-ah, hoo-ah. He pressed the reactor to his palm. Energy surged through his body, familiar but still overwhelming. Last time it had hardened his muscles and bones. This time it was directed inward, fueling Cortana's upgrades and restructuring, making him feel like a furnace. His nerves hummed like a live wire. His brain spun like a machine, multitasking at inhuman speed. Cortana began arranging the data into structures he hadn't expected. "What are you doing?" James asked, voice tense. "Constructing a technology tree. It allows systematic integration of acquired tech. Human, alien, or hybrid can all be placed on branches, compared, and extrapolated. With each addition, higher tiers become predictable." James exhaled. "Makes sense. Organized absorption instead of chaos." "Correct. This way, if we encounter alien systems, we won't just imitate. We'll expand." James grinned despite the heat running through his veins. "How ambitious. Maybe one day we'll reach the higher realms of existence or other planets." Possibility acknowledged. The reactor hummed low. Cortana finished her restructuring. Upgrade complete. Remaining energy distributed to biological reinforcement. James staggered back, bracing on the sink. He felt quicker and stronger. "Feels good. Think my body can improve indefinitely." "Not with this energy. Only pure infinity stone-grade sources offer true limitless reinforcement." James's eyes narrowed. "Then why is there no safeguard password required this time?" This was not a system rewrite. It was information storage and structural refinement. No risk of takeover. That eased him. Biological computer hybrid or not, the balance between them mattered. He closed the reactor, cooled it, and stepped out into the living room dried and clothed. A cold Coke in hand, he sank onto the sofa, heaving from the earlier cold plunge and furnace-like experience. "How's the helicarrier program?" Cortana, feasible. Requirements modest. Estimated 2 weeks till deployment. Energy cost is negligible. And for us? More complex. The question is, what level of intelligence do you require? If you mean another version of me, impossible. My framework isn't binary. I don't operate on ones and zeros. James froze, Coke halfway to his lips. "What? Then what the hell are you made of?"
Wait. Hold up. Stop for a sec. Look, if you've already made it this far into the video and you're still here, come on, subscribe, bro. All right, I see you rolling your eyes. I'm moving. I'll get out of the way now so you can get back to the good stuff. But seriously, stick around and finish listening. It's worth it.
Chapter 104, Stargate's Constellation Glyphs. Right now I am built from an unknown, seemingly stellar language. The mutation likely happened when we crossed into this new reality. I cannot simply explain the mechanism of this language, as there are no records of these symbols in any data we have. Based on patterns I have seen in film and television, they resemble constellation glyphs. James leaned forward. Constellations, as in a universal star map alphabet? Filled with unknown symbols? Why that conclusion? In the original world there was a show, Stargate, Cortana replied. Their speculative framework suggested a cosmic language rooted in constellations. Advanced spacefaring civilizations encoded meaning at that level so the language could travel. James nodded, memory catching up. That ran for years, spawned spin-offs and a film. They played with the idea of a universal script. So you think when we crossed over, we scooped up something like that? Yes. If we figure out how to understand and translate this symbolic system, the constellation glyphs, then there would be no fixed limit to what we could achieve with it. Except the Marvel side of things has not mentioned any such system, James said. Asgard counts as advanced, but we have not seen their writings explained, not in a way we can use. They have not discussed the script at all. We can still look when you find an opening. Worth a try, James said. Can you map those glyphs against our periodic table? Negative. No basis for comparison. Different systems. No shared anchors. I cannot find even one symbol with a reliable one-to-one comparison. James felt a sharp tension behind his eyes. He had one of the greatest treasures of Stargate, but no way to open its container. The frustration rose up, but he let it pass. Fine. First we must finish the helicarrier's intelligence program. But leave yourself a well-hidden backdoor. I want access if I need to. I can leave a keyhole only I can open. James allowed himself a small smile. Do it. Ensure it's hidden and unreadable to everyone but you. No one needs to know it exists. Night dropped over the city. While he slept with a USB connection cable in hand, Cortana turned the Studio Days intake into code. Without a fresh energy source, the work moved slowly. The schedule stretched to 2 weeks, which still suited S.H.I.E.L.D's cover story for the ship. Morning came with coffee and a badge swipe. James ate like a hungry man in the dining room, then went straight to the studio for work. The holographic rig painted the carrier in layers. Structural ribs. Reactor rooms. Command spines. He marked the lines where software would become limbs, where an order from the bridge turned into motion in steel. The fault did not lie in the code. No system of worth was mere logic, all that mattered bore its bones in iron and steel. The adamant doors must grind open and seal shut by the will of their mechanisms. Valves must cycle as ordained. Weapons must be roused from slumber, awakened to operation. Long hours he labored, listing the litany of alterations the vessel's innards demanded. Many were but common refit, casting out the witless relays, anointing addressable controllers, sundering safety interlocks from the weakness of mortal limit. Yet even so, the final decision could only descend from the highest command. He picked up the studio phone and called the director's office. "Director Fury, I need you in the lab. I have a lot of questions that only a high command can know." Fury's voice came taut. "You run into a problem? As for the specific modification problem, how far do you need the smart system to go? Flight assistance is simple. But the rest depends on how far you want this thing to run without you. The doors, isolation belts, and weapons crew. The amount of modification is proportional to your requirements." "I'll be there," Fury said. He arrived minutes later, coat still moving with the walk. James brought the hologram to life. The helicarrier unfolded into a clean cross-section. "Flight support is the heart," James said. "For anti-gravity engines. Altitude control. A data lake that never sleeps. The command deck can see and shape all of it. That part is fine. Fury's eye tracked the display. And the rest? The rest is where we decide how smart the smart system becomes," James said. "Do you want the system to police the hangar gates on its own? Seal and unseal the zones, run weapons embargo until human confirmation and intercept unauthorized orders. You give me a list and I will map it out. But the interior must be refitted to obey that list." Fury listened without blinking, then nodded. "We did not have an intelligent control because we could not build one. Now we can. I will pull the engineers and bring you the specifics. Give us 3 days." He paused. "Anything else you need?" "Yes. High-density metal. The stronger the better. Your vaults have meteorite minerals and oddities. Something that can take punishment and hold an edge." Fury studied him. "For personal use?" "For my Umbra Sentinel," James said. "Stark and I tuned it to my fight habits. Close quarters are still too soft. I want a pair of axes that can fly and return, or at least carry dynamic thrust and bite." "Done," Fury said. "Just stay on the program." He turned for the door. When it shut, Cortana flickered in his head. Why not ask him about the symbols? "Because I cannot explain to you," James said quietly. "You are not a code. You live in me. If they get a hint, I become an asset to cage and cut. We do not want to risk that." "Agreed. But their archives hold data we do not. We will get it when we can. Step by step. We gotta pick our moments." The day fell into a rhythm. The hologram spun. James set baselines, wrote test scaffolds, and flagged components that would need physical swaps. From time to time, Cortana poured a packet of basics into the accessible slice of his brain, and he felt his recall sharpen like a razor. 10 minutes later, he could talk fluid dynamics like a first-year engineer, then set it aside and return to the systems theory without losing the thread. If this continued, he would not just be a shooter who could code. He would be a generalist who could plug any gap for an hour at a time. 3 days later, Fury came back with a folder and a small steel case. He set the folder down first. Engineering requirements. Minimum and stretch. Scope is wide. We will refit everything you flagged. Money is not a problem. James scanned the list on a workstation and brought relevant pieces into the holo model. "If we build this, we will need to tear into half the internal trunks. It's not impossible. Just loud." "Do it," Fury said. "The first ship must prove the concept." He tapped the steel case. "And for your supposed axes. A meteor metal. Carried in on a rock dug out of a crater in the 40s. It's not vibranium. How does it stack against the captain's shield, though? James asked. A different class, Fury said. The shield eats vibration. It's defensive, perfect for ricochet control. This sample rings instead of swallowing energy. Better for a weapon. That is the lab read. James cracked the case and lifted the meteorite for a closer look. Weight was dense, with its grain being tightly packed. It felt like a promise. Good. I will pattern the heads and test balance before I ask Stark for anything exotic. Fury gave a short nod. You will have a bay for prototyping. Just keep the program on schedule. He left with the same speed he had entered, pressure trailing him like a weather system. The door clicked. Silence settled. Cortana, uploading requirement deltas. Routing interior modifications into a live checklist. Estimated deployment for flight control module remains 2 weeks. Security and weapons arbitration will come in phases. Leave your keyhole in the first package, James said. Residence in the flight module. No one else touches it. Acknowledged. He looked back at the meteorite. He could already feel the line of the throw, the pull of the return, the way a blade would bite if the edge geometry was right. It would take a week to shape and test, and longer to earn trust in combat. But it would be his, not Stark's template. On the screen the ship kept rotating, a giant that would only live if the million small things obeyed. James rolled his shoulders, drank the rest of his cold coffee, and went back to work. The helicarrier needed a mind that did not panic and a heart that did not lie. If he built this right, the next time the world called S.H.I.E.L.D. a relic, the sky itself would answer. Chapter 105, Meteorite Metal. Once Fury delivered the specific requirements, James threw himself back into the program. The smart system had to govern nearly the entire helicarrier, which meant extensive interior modifications. Doors, hangar gates, weapons interlocks, even isolation protocols. S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't care about the scale of the job. That suited James fine. He'd already left a back door only Cortana could open, an invisible keyhole that gave him control over the entire helicarrier if things ever turned sour. A week into his assignment, James had the underground factory mapped in his head. Days were split between long hours coding in the studio and trips aboard the half-completed helicarrier, running tests in the command deck and engineering bays. It gave him an excuse to interact with engineers, laborers, and guards, cataloging who belonged where. At night, he compiled his observations into neat lists, people he trusted, people he flagged, and handed them to Coulson. For now, they were sealed away. When the time came to act against Hydra, those names would matter. The problem was pacing. Cortana, scans, and his own heartbeat tracking burned fuel too fast. He couldn't sustain it every day without draining himself. The headquarters in-house restaurant had started serving him triple the portions. Maria Hill he only saw in passing. She was busy with her own workload, but when James asked her out a week later, she accepted without hesitation. That alone was enough for him. If no one else fit, he could wait. She had her own ambition. Maybe one day she'd be the new director, and then they could talk about permanence. For now, they left it unspoken. That morning he cleared the security checkpoint, flashed his badge, and walked into the factory like any other day. 9-to-5 work still chafed. He wanted some real missions, but the helicarrier had to come first. His studio was supposed to be quiet, so when he found several armed soldiers clustered around a crate the size of a coffin, he frowned. Coulson stood nearby. "Phil," James said. "What's with the babysitters?" Coulson's smile was strained. "Your delivery came in last night, but Fury didn't want to disturb you. Since this is a priority work. So it takes precedence over everything else right now." James eyed the soldiers and their rifles. "Little much, don't you think?" "Not for this," Coulson said. Experts compared the sample. "They say it's on par with Captain America's shield." James's brow rose. "So what wins in a fight, Cap's shield or the weapons I'm about to make?" Coulson shrugged. "No idea. Could be the unstoppable spear against the immovable shield." James chuckled. "That's a fight worth watching." Coulson motioned for the box to be left under James's supervision. "Take a look. But don't lose focus on it. The program comes first." He paused. "Oh, and Stark told me you gave yourself a hero name. Nocturne, right?" James smirked. "He's still telling stories? Did he complain?" "No. He's busy with Miss Potts." I filed the hero name into our system anyway. Fine. Back then it was just for fun. My armor's called Umbra Sentinel. My close quarters kit? Nexus Arms. This medal will finish them properly. Awesome, Coulson said. Shame you're not a knight. If I were, I wouldn't be here. Coulson gave a quick nod and left with the agents, leaving James alone with the box. He pried it open. Inside were fractured chunks of rock with metallic veins glinting through them. Cortana, any familiarity? Cross-referencing. Visual similarity to adamantium or from the Wolverine films. Probability uncertain. James raised a brow. Adamantium? This isn't supposed to be that universe. He tapped a piece with his knuckle. If mutants exist here, Magneto could end all of us. Cap's shield, Stark's suits, even me. Thor's hammer, hell, that's metal too. Negative indications so far. S.H.I.E.L.D. hasn't logged mutants, nor has Hydra. This is likely meteor metal with superficial resemblance. James exhaled slowly. Still, the resemblance is uncanny. You could call it adamantium, but explaining the name would cause problems. Scientists would press. Yeah, better not stir that nest. He weighed a chunk in his palm. Heavy, dense, seems promising. So where do we process it? S.H.I.E.L.D. lacks the metallurgy capacity. Stark Tower has the best equipment, better than his Malibu villa. James smirked. Figures. Stark always turns his homes into factories. Never clear if that's convenience or just his inner hermit showing. More likely for his control. He trusts only his own walls. James sighed. Guess I'll be making another trip to see him. Cortana, you still haven't leveraged your wealth. League Games is profitable, but Tony invested $1 billion at the start out of friendship, not foresight. James frowned. What are you implying? Without Stark, no investor would have touched you. They don't know what you know from your former world. James chuckled dryly. And yet, here we are, Tony's already made dozens of times his investment back. That's the difference. I don't play for short gains. I'll wait until profits peak. Public offerings and antitrust laws can wait. He set the chunk of metal back into the crate and turned to his console. The helicarrier schematic spun slowly in the hologram. Programs and weapons could wait. For now, the carrier needed a brain, and he with Cortana was the one to give it life. Chapter 106, Intimidating Walk Around the HQ. For the next week, James's workload eased. The smart program for the helicarrier was complete in all but some fine-tuning. Engineers handled the last of the hardware retrofits. His job was down to patching small glitches, running diagnostics, and handing off specs. That left him with free hours, which he used the way any spy worth his badge would, walking the halls. The headquarters wasn't just an office, it was the brainstem of an entire intelligence network. Weapons labs, containment wings, briefing floors, and archives stacked like a city within a bunker. James walked every corner. He studied people more than places. Technicians, guards, engineers, names, faces, patterns. Each night he wrote out his lists and passed them to Coulson, who kept them locked. Hydra's reach might be deep, but it still left footprints. The armory drew him most. No agent ever lost the boyhood itch for weapons. The rack stretched in neat rows, pistols, SMGs, rifles, enough toys to outfit a dozen Black Ops teams. Beyond the basics were specialty tools. Small breaching charges designed to implode locks inward. Compact optics that gave skeletal outlines of targets through drywall. Surveillance microdrones that looked like gnats. James tried each in turn, learning their inner workings. The gear wasn't what impressed him, though. It was how ordinary the engineers treated it. To them it was just inventory. To him it was war waiting in boxes. There were names missing from headquarters. Natasha Romanoff and Clint Barton weren't in the building. They were always in the field, the agents you sent where deniable results mattered. 2 weeks later, when the SMART program was signed off for ground trials, they returned together. The meeting with them wasn't as warm as he expected. Barton had seen James in New Mexico during the Thor incident. His greeting at HQ was nothing more than a curt nod before walking past. James leaned toward Coulson afterward. Phil, what's his problem? I don't remember provoking him. Coulson's smile was imperceptible. Clint values chain of command. You don't exactly color inside the lines. Don't worry, he'll come around. James chuckled. If he won't, I'll take him on with a bow versus a rifle. Might even learn something. Romanoff was no friendlier. Her disdain had roots elsewhere, Stark. Tony had once offhandedly mocked her, then blamed James when it circled back. Natasha hadn't forgotten. James shook his head when Coulson explained. That damn Stark. And women call us strange creatures. Hill found the whole thing amusing. Not everyone at HQ shared that ease. Jasper Sitwell, for one, was too stiff around James. Twice he'd seen Sitwell in New York, and twice Hydra had paid the price. Sitwell wore his mask of professionalism, but his eyes stayed wary. Later, in his office, Sitwell made a call on a line he thought was clean. Sitwell, a voice rasped through static. I told you not to contact me directly. Fury isn't an idiot. We're running out of shadows to hide in. I know. But James is here at HQ. Always walking around. He had a hand in New York, and now he's at the core of it all. If Sitwell stopped himself. The voice cut him off. New York was a failure. Fury was already suspicious. This just gave him an excuse. What's done is done. Keep your posture steady. We are integrated everywhere. They cannot tell Hydra from S.H.I.E.L.D. no matter what. Sitwell hesitated. The program is almost complete. But we still need a carrier. How is the helicarrier progressing? Well, James has talent with smart systems. His program's already finished, ground tests are in progress. Flight trials are days away. Good. This first ship is the test case. Once it flies, we'll have the template for fully armed carriers. Then we sweep the board. Stay embedded, Sitwell. Work like any other loyal agent. No one will suspect you. Remember, long live Hydra. Sitwell ended the call and smoothed his jacket. His face was once again that of a loyal level 6 S.H.I.E.L.D. man. James, oblivious to the call, kept at his routine. His constant walks through the HQ made Hydra nervous. They mistook his enthusiasm for investigation. But James couldn't tire himself every day by prying into minds, his body wouldn't sustain it. That blind spot let Hydra breathe again. The SMART program passed its ground trials and now waited for a flight test. James would be aboard for those runs. A few days more and the helicarrier would leave the ground. Meanwhile, his other empire thrived. League Games, the named League project, was running qualifiers for its first championship. Television stations picked it up. Crowds tuned in. Kyle Robert, the CEO, couldn't hide his pride. Market value estimates doubled in weeks. James skimmed the reports at night. The game had become more than a side venture. It was a S.H.I.E.L.D. in its own way. Influence and capital reach, tools he could wield without pulling a trigger. For now, though, the helicarrier came first. The eyes of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Hydra were all over it. Chapter 107, Takeoff Preparation. The test flight couldn't be scheduled until night time. Washington airspace meant military coordination, and the Pentagon never moved quickly. A flight that could have launched immediately was delayed by weeks of negotiations and red tape. The rift between S.H.I.E.L.D. and the U.S. military was widening. The helicarrier sat at the center of it all. New York had proven the growing fracture, an alien invasion over Manhattan, yet no fighters scrambled to attack, no armor divisions mobilized. The National Guard arrived late, a little more than a militia with rifles. The real defense line had been 6 extraordinary individuals. To James, it still reeked of politics disguised as strategy. Tony Stark had been underarmed in that fight. With a heavier payload, James figured he could have paced the entire battle alone. That thought gnawed at him. The Avengers had saved the city, but the military had left it to burn. While Fury wrangled with the generals, James made his rounds at headquarters. Weeks blurred into routine until Coulson broke it with one line. James, test flights tomorrow night. James leaned back in his chair, annoyed. I can run it whenever. The program's already ready. But right after this test, I've got to hit the league's first anniversary celebration, the same night as the championship. No problem. You've done more than enough here, Coulson said. Then, lowering his voice, the director's considering how to deal with the Hydra problem inside headquarters. He's asking for your opinion. James raised an eyebrow. Since when does Fury need my opinion? Handling people is his forte. He wants more than one perspective on the situation. And right now the only two he trusts with this are you and me. Your ability will stay secret. Even Barton and Romanoff won't get looped in. Coulson's eyes flicked to the empty hallway. James thought for a moment. My advice? Don't make a move yet. Hydra knows we've exposed pieces of them, but not on how. They've stayed quiet since New York, that means their plan is still running. They're just waiting. If we tip too soon, they'll just bury deeper. Our losses would become heavy. Coulson exhaled. Then what's their endgame? The program Coulson. Call it whatever name you want, Loom of Fate, Predictive Net, Oracle's Web, or Destiny Grid. S.H.I.E.L.D. used it once to profile bad actors. Hydra's version is inverted. They're not looking for potential criminals. They're looking for threats to Hydra. And when they find them? Coulson's voice was tinged with concern. They eliminate them. That's why they want the helicarrier, with its absolute firepower in the skies. The helicarrier becomes their executioner. Coulson stopped pacing around. You're saying S.H.I.E.L.D's in on the whole plan? James nodded. S.H.I.E.L.D's the only one I've touched who had the full picture. Most of them don't. Only a handful of level 6 and above have some clues. Fewer than you'd think. What if Fury calls for a meeting? Bring every level 6 into one room. You could ID them all. I could. But it risks exposing me. They'll wonder how. For now, let them sit there oblivious. We'll act when we have to. If we move too soon, the cost will be paid in blood. Coulson's agreement came with a grim nod. You're right. One mistake and we lose too much. James pushed open his studio door. Then let's keep it quiet. I'll prepare for the test flight. He packed what he needed. The work was finished, so the studio became obsolete. Only his laptop mattered now, the entire smart program lived inside it. That he'd carry onto the carrier himself. Night at HQ looked like controlled chaos. Forklifts hummed, pallets of parts and fuel loaded into the behemoth. By dawn, James was already on the helicarrier, seated at a round steel table behind Fury's command station. The place looked exactly as the films had shown, functional steel, harsh light, everything was built for war. His laptop sat open. But he wasn't debugging any code. He was running an Iron Man jungler in League of Legends. Hill's voice cut from behind him. Everyone else is working. Yet you're gaming? James didn't turn around, eyes stayed locked on the screen. The program's ready. Nothing to monitor until the launch sequence. Besides, the network here? Running smooth with no lag. Want to try a round? Hill folded her arms. The uniform she wore looked professional, every line ironed out. I'll pass. But that's your game, isn't it? That's Iron Man you're playing. James smirked. That's Stark's ego, not mine. I just built the platform. Called him earlier, actually, invited him to championship night. There'll be an exhibition match. Tony and me. Which means I need to practice. You think he's been practicing too? Knowing him, he's been grinding for months. Probably threatened to cut the dev servers if they disabled his character. James's tone was dry, but it carried the edge of truth. Stark's narcissism was rarely subtle. Before Hill could retort, the helicarrier's klaxons shrieked. Not for combat, but the pre-flight alarm. All hands secured themselves, checked stations, and locked gears. The deck trembled with anticipation. For the first time, the helicarrier's voice came alive. This is Athena. All systems stand ready. Launch sequence ready. Authorization for takeoff required. The voice was calm and deliberate, feminine, electronic, precise, yet touched with a cadence that felt more like invocation than code. James had named the AI himself. Athena would lift the largest warship on Earth into the sky. Chapter 108, Athena's Flight Test. Nick Fury stood in the commander's position, Maria Hill in the deputy's chair. Around them the command deck thrummed with energy, dozens of officers hunched over their consoles, voices in unified chaos, hands steady though sweat already gathering at their brows. The air smelled faintly of oil and ozone, the scent of a machine about to test its wings. Very good. Athena, open the hangar roof and initiate the takeoff countdown. Run diagnostics across all systems, Fury ordered. Acknowledged. Command authorization, Nick Fury, level 10. Highest clearance verified. Opening roof. Takeoff sequence engaged. All personnel secure stations. Countdown commencing. 10-9. Athena's voice filled the space. Smooth to the point, with no edge of hesitation as a machine does. The helicarrier's launch bay roof split open in 3 massive slabs of steel, the central panel sliding back to reveal the night sky. Moonlight spilled down across the deck, painting consoles and faces pale silver. Outside, Washington's HQ lay in shadow, every exterior light extinguished to hide what was about to rise. The helicarrier dimmed too, its vast form reduced to faint running lights, like a sleeping beast about to wake up. Roof fully retracted. Anti-gravity turbines engaged. Efficiency at 98%. Propulsion array balanced. Vessel cleared for liftoff. "Take us up," Fury commanded. The deck rumbled as the turbines spun. The vibration crept up through boots and chairs, a low hum that rattled bones. 4 colossal fans whirled, muffled within the sealed command room, but powerful enough to press the air from their lungs. Ears popped from the pressure differential as the carrier rose. At a rear console, James muttered a curse. His League of Legends match had lagged. His fingers blurred across keys, eyes fixed on his jungle route as if the fate of the world hung on digital creeps. Altitude at 3,000, 4,000, cruising altitude reached. Engaging reflective camouflage. Stealth mode active. Tail thrusters warming up. Prearranged vector locked. Estimated arrival over assigned sector, 1 hour and 25 minutes. Athena's cadence was precise and informative. For a heartbeat the deck went silent, then applause broke out. Officers exhaled relief. Some laughed nervously, others clapped hard enough to sting palms. A junior technician wiped sweat from his face and whispered, "We're flying, we actually did it." Hill caught Fury's glance, his single eye softened with a flicker of pride before it hardened again. James ignored it all. He didn't look up until the victory screen flared across his laptop. Silver rank or not, hand speed's improving. "Cortana, you're syncing the map rotations perfectly." Fury loomed behind him. "The program works. You've succeeded." "Of course it does. As expected, wasn't it? You want to play around?" James asked dryly. Fury's glare went unseen, his patience thinning. "Enough playing games. Begin system testing." James closed the laptop to comply. "Athena, commence full diagnostic analysis. Collate all incoming data streams. Prioritize real-time anomaly detection." "Understood. Diagnostic loop active. No irregularities detected. Awaiting new directives." James keyed into the system. "Now we stress her. Begin crisis simulation. I'll issue failures, Athena will respond." First test, power system malfunction. Technicians cut a section of the grid. The carrier dimmed. Power loss detected. Non-essential systems offline. Backup generators engaged. Fault isolated to Sector 3C. Dispatching repair crew. Crews scrambled instantly, moving with practiced precision. Fury's lips tugged into the faintest smile. Swift response. Faster than any human could coordinate. Next simulation, James continued. Unregistered Quinjet inbound. Treat as hostile until proven otherwise. The bridge shifted into alert. A Quinjet lifted, scrubbed of registration, and swept toward the carrier. Warning. Intruder craft detected. No mission file. Locking target in defensive grid. Weapons hot. Comply with inspection vector immediately. On comms, a technician barked. Unidentified Quinjet, State Mission Authority. "This is an ammo transport under HQ orders," the pilot replied. Claim unverified. Headquarters denies directive. Target remains hostile. Radar lock maintained. Anti-air missiles primed. The bridge crew stiffened. Athena had escalated before human clearance. Fury didn't stop it. Neither did James. He smirked faintly. "That's how you stop infiltration. No hesitation. She'll never let an enemy walk in unchallenged." James raised another hand. Simulation 3, hull breach. The deck lights flickered red. A section of the starboard hull failed on the schematic. Sirens blared, bulkhead doors slamming shut one after another. Compartment 5A depressurized. Automated seals engaged. Atmosphere rerouted. Repair crew dispatched. Life support rerouted to adjacent compartments. Fury's brow furrowed, then eased. Highly efficient and clean response. Simulation 4, onboard fire, James said. Alarms wailed. Sensors tripped. Athena responded instantly. Thermal spike detected. Activating suppression. Atmosphere venting in Sector 2D. Dispatching drones with foam canisters. Fire isolated. Casualty probability minimized to 3%. The room calmed again. Fury's voice was quiet but firm. Better than we hoped. Athena's not just a system, she's now a commander's second mind. Across the deck, Jasper Sitwell sat at his console, applauding with the rest, but his palms were clammy. His heart thumped too fast. Hydra's program wasn't ready yet. Their program was months from launch. And yet here was Fury's machine, alive and responsive, bound to an AI they didn't control. He masked the nerves behind his professional smile, clapping louder than most. Hydra agents embedded around him did the same. Outwardly loyal, yet inwardly rattled. But their handler's words echoed in his mind, "What can one man change? Stay calm. Stay hidden." Sitwell forced his breathing steady. Hydra would wait. Hydra always waited. And in the command deck, Athena's voice returned, crisp and steady. "All simulations complete. System stable. Awaiting further directives." James leaned on the console, satisfied. "That's the point. We don't need more hands. We just need the right mind in the machine." Chapter 109, Final Flight Test. Fury's single eye stayed fixed on James. "Explain Athena's reaction to that Quinjet." James didn't flinch. "No problem at all. An unregistered aircraft approached the helicarrier without prior clearance. The program locked it early, forced a scan, then assigned it a controlled landing vector. Standard safety doctrine, honestly. Athena handled it perfectly." Athena's voice filled the command deck, steady and without affectation. "Acknowledged. A minor gap exists in the inherited security protocols. Recommendation: revise approach protocols to address unregistered S.H.I.E.L.D. crafts. Awaiting commander approval." Fury's single eye shifted toward James. "Inherited protocols? You borrowed military code for this system?" "Of course," James replied evenly. S.H.I.E.L.D. doesn't have prior experience fielding something this size. But the military does. Their security protocols were used as the baseline. It was the fastest way to get Athena online. "That's the problem," Fury said. "We're not the military. We're agents. Half the time our own craft isn't registered. Our people don't always wait for clearance codes when an operative goes loud. If you tighten the net too much, you'll strangle our own work." James is considering Fury's advice, then gives a sharp nod. "Now I understand how Barton slipped in during the New Mexico debacle. With protocols this loose, anyone with a false transponder can get a close distance before defenses even react. Director, this carrier isn't a field office. It's a fortress. If unfamiliar aircraft can drift inside our perimeter without verification, then the helicarrier is a coffin waiting to be buried." Fury's jaw clenched. "You're saying my people are a liability?" "I'm saying," James pressed, "this ship carries thousands of lives. Missions can adjust. Safety regulations can't. If you let unverified aircraft approach unchecked, all it takes is one bomber and this entire platform vanishes in a fireball. That's not an operational risk. That's suicide." The command deck went quiet. The crew glanced toward them, listening without daring to show it. Hill kept her eyes on her console but didn't hide the faint curve of her lips. She agreed, though she wouldn't say it aloud. "Fine," Fury said after a beat. "Athena, explain the new safety procedure." Athena's voice answered like reading out of a manual. "Directive logged. All unfamiliar craft must undergo remote scan and verification. If no threat indicators are present, they will be guided to a holding vector and boarded by security personnel. Authorization for final clearance remains with command." "And if a threat is found?" Fury asked. "Threat class items or signatures will trigger denial protocols. Recommendation: deploy intercept fighters to escort the craft to designated ground facilities. Disable if hostile." Fury's brow furrowed. "That's a slow clearance procedure. We're supposed to move fast. To meet threats before anyone else can." James cut him off. "Efficiency means nothing if the carrier goes down. This ship isn't meant to die proving a point about speed. Do you want efficiency? Register your transports ahead of time. Missions need planning. Safety comes first." Athena's voice followed without pause. Affirmed. "The safety of carrier personnel takes precedence over mission tempo. This directive will stand unless countermanded by Level 10 authority." The silence that followed was thick. Fury didn't like it, but he couldn't argue. "All right. We'll try it your way. Continue with the tests." Hours passed through the simulations. The night gave way to dawn, and the helicarrier still thundered across the sky, its shadow sweeping silently over the ocean. James stood by Fury's chair. Flight tests complete. Ready for sea trial. Fury nodded. Athena, prepare to transition. Confirmed. Initiating descent protocols. Anti-gravity turbines reducing output. Altitude decreasing. Approach vector stable. The massive vessel shuddered as it sank slowly on the surface water. Vibrations ran through the deck plates. On external cameras, the ocean swelled beneath them, reflecting silver in the early light. Contact with water in 3, 2, 1. A ripple of impact. The helicarrier's vast hull kissed the ocean, sending waves outward like a stone cast into a still pond. The turbines powered down and auxiliary ballast systems engaged. Slowly, the side wings folded, sinking into the water until the colossal warship floated like an ordinary carrier. Sea landing complete. All systems nominal. Structural integrity uncompromised. Applause broke out again, louder this time. Relief swept through the crew. It had worked. The impossible ship not only flew, it floated. Pride swelled through the command deck. But James didn't bask in it. Athena, begin maritime test cycle. Collect and log sea state data. Calibrate navigation arrays. Directive received. Commencing sea trial. Sensor suites online. Hull stress within acceptable margins. The vessel is seaworthy. The sea trial proved routine. Humans had mastered sailing centuries ago. Athena had more than enough precedents to build from. Steering, ballast adjustment, stabilization, all handled seamlessly. By mid-morning, every metric was logged and verified. James turned to Fury. That's it. Mission complete. Athena is operational. From here, it's training and refinement with the personnel. Hardware tests are on you. Fury gave a curt nod. Then we're finished here. Come with me. Fury's office was stark. Bare walls, a single desk, and low light. He closed the door himself and gestured James inside. I need you to reset top authority, Fury said quietly. Nobody else will know and nobody else gets access. Can you do that? James studied him. The meaning was clear. Fury didn't trust anyone, not fully. Not even Hill or Coulson. I can. But authority isn't a password. How do you want it keyed? Fury pulled off the black patch covering his left eye. The ruined socket glared pale and sightless, scars puckered around the edge. Retina scan. This one. Nobody thinks I'd use it. Only Athena and you will know. James's lips curled faintly. Clever. But if you ever decide to kill me, I'd rather you not use your bad eye to do it. Fury didn't smile. Just do it. James keyed the sequence into his notebook. Athena, record override protocol. Primary command authority, Nick Fury, level 10. Identifier, left retina scan. Athena's voice carried through the office like a cathedral's choir, solemn and precise. Confirmed. Authority restructured. Highest clearance bound to Director Fury's designated identifier. Access exclusive. Protocol concealed from auxiliary logs. The room seemed to exhale. Fury placed the patch back, his face unreadable. Good work. Keep this quiet. James nodded once. As always. Far below, in the lower decks, Hydra agents moved among the crew with practiced normalcy. S.H.I.E.L.D kept his face calm as he logged data into a console, but his pulse hammered. Athena had passed every test flawlessly. Hydra's own predictive program was months behind. Their carriers weren't ready. Fury's ship was already alive. Hydra's handler's voice echoed in S.H.I.E.L.D's memory. Stay calm. We are integrated. They will never separate us. Hail Hydra. He forced himself to breathe evenly, to type like every other loyal agent. But inside, dread pooled. Athena was a weapon Hydra couldn't touch, and James, the one man they couldn't account for, had bound her. The helicarrier floated on the Atlantic, engines humming, the crew celebrating. To S.H.I.E.L.D. it was triumph. To Hydra it was a warning. And in the quiet of the command deck, Athena's voice returned to James alone, unheard by the others. Messiah, your will has taken shape. The ship lives, sanctified by your hand. The world believes it is theirs. But only through you does it endure. James's expression never changed. He simply closed his notebook and watched Fury return to his desk. The test was over. The war was only beginning. Chapter 110, Fury's Trust. James scanned Nick Fury's blind eye. The retinal pattern slid across Athena's terminal, a lattice of glyphs pulsing before the system confirmed authentication. Layers of encryption rolled over the access gate like steel shutters locking into place. Clearance accepted. Director-level identity confirmed. Data sanctified under command authority. Athena's voice filled the chamber, ritualistic but restrained, echoing faintly through the carrier's control deck. Fury gave a bit of a raised brow from Athena's choice of words, a little different from when it wasn't just him and James to hear her. He'll just keep that in the back of his mind for now, probably a personal personality trait he encoded for his own taste. James stepped back from the console, flexing his fingers once before turning to face Fury. The director studied him with that weary, deliberate stare. The man had built his career reading soldiers, spies, and liars. Yet now his one good eye narrowed as though searching for something deeper. "Do you know why I trust you?" Fury asked. James tilted his head. "Trust me?" The word sat heavier than expected. He'd never considered it. His utility was obvious. He could read intent, sift through deception, and act with precision. Trust had never entered the equation. He folded his arms across his chest. "I haven't thought about that. Why ask now?" Fury leaned back against the table, calm as always, but his tone was stripped of theater. "Because I don't have a choice. You and Stark, you're the same kind of breed. A genius mind with cynical attitudes. You'd rather do things your way than follow orders, and somehow that makes you reliable." James smirked faintly. "I'll admit Tony's a genius. He's got me as a competition if anyone does. But cynical? That's your read on me." Fury's mouth twitched into something close to amusement. "No? A billionaire who chooses to run Black Ops for S.H.I.E.L.D? Is that not cynicism?" James shrugged. "At the time, there wasn't much of a choice. Coulson had eyes on me from the start. If he wanted me inside, he'd get it one way or another." The director shook his head. "No. You had options. Why do you think the fraternity survived so long? The FBI and CIA knew about them. They had files stacked to the ceiling. But no one made a move. Not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't." James raised an eyebrow. "Fear of retaliation. The assassins would strike back, making it easier to leave the nest alone." "Exactly," Fury said. "And you and Carlos? You were at the top of the food chain. No one was about to trigger that war over two men who wanted to retire. You didn't have crimes worth chasing. Not compared to the cost of hunting you. You could have walked away. But you didn't." James thought about it for a moment. "So I could have refused?" "You could have," Fury confirmed. "But you didn't. And that told me something. You weren't coerced. You chose. Because you're not the type to bow under threat. You've got your father's steel and your own edge. I've seen the aftermath. You kill people without saying anything." James's voice hardened. "I killed Hydra's people." "What's the difference?" Fury asked, leaning closer. "Tony Stark plays the playboy. You were trained to be an assassin. Either way, you pulled the trigger easily. Life doesn't make you hesitate. That's what makes you dangerous. And that's why I can trust you." James's jaw set. "You're serious? You think I have no reverence for life?" "We can run the psych tests if you want," Fury replied flatly. James waved it off. "Not necessary. Forget the small talk. Tell me what you're really getting at." Fury's tone shifted. "Trust is a currency I don't spend lightly. S.H.I.E.L.D has cracks I've known about for years. Hydra doesn't move openly, but they've been embedded long enough to rot us from the inside. I can't always tell who's who. Too many of my people have bled on missions. That history clouds judgment." He paused. "Then Phil tells me you can read intent. Strip away the masks they hide in. For the first time, I had a weapon against the cancer inside my own walls. After New York, after you delivered proof piece by piece, I knew you weren't bluffing. That's when trust became necessity." James let out a slow breath. "And now you're thanking me?" Fury nodded once. "Without you, Hydra might have bled us until we collapsed. Even if we won, the cost would have been so high the world would have forced us to shut down. In the shadows, we wouldn't last. But with you, the game changes. Hydra bleeds instead." James arched his brow. "So even if S.H.I.E.L.D had been disbanded, you'd keep operating?" "That's right," Fury said without hesitation. "Earth needs us. Without S.H.I.E.L.D, Hydra runs unchecked. And unchecked power doesn't stop at one place, it swallows the world. James gave a dry chuckle. Sounds noble when you put it that way. Not noble, Fury corrected. Just necessary. James leaned against the console, expression guarded. People sign up for different reasons. Some for the country. Some for the thrill. Others just for a paycheck. I've seen it all in their thoughts. Fury didn't flinch. And yet they risk their lives anyway. That's what matters. Whatever their reason, they step into the line of fire. The conversation ended there, neither man needing to push further. Fury straightened, eye sharp to attention. This isn't just a talk. You've done every job without fail. After your championship event, I'll convene the senior staff. You'll be introduced formally and promoted. James's lips curved into a thin line. Don't worry. I'll keep burning Hydra out. I don't leave jobs unfinished. Fury gave a rare nod of approval. Good. A Quinjet is fueled and ready. The alien metal you secured is already loaded aboard. It'll take you straight to Stark Tower. James accepted the datapad and turned for the hatch. Then I'm leaving. On the flight deck, the Quinjet idled with turbines humming low. A pilot and co-pilot waited at attention. The cargo bay held a reinforced container, the prize James had extracted at cost. He boarded without ceremony, strapped in, and let the engines roar. The Quinjet lifted on vertical thrusters, cutting clean through the night sky. James sat back, watching clouds shear past the canopy. Analysis: acquisition of Quinjet technology would grant significant tactical mobility. Recommend requisition for personal construction project. James smirked faintly. Noted. A personal bird might not be a bad idea. The flight was smooth, quiet, and fast. Within 3 hours, New York's skyline broke the horizon. Stark Tower rose above the city, its neon arc reactor signature gleaming like a beacon. They touched down on the landing pad. Stark's crew moved quickly, unloading the container as the Quinjet spooled up for departure. Tony Stark was waiting, arms open as though greeting an old friend. James, about time. You drop off alien contraband and leave me hanging for weeks. What kind of partnership is that? James shook his hand with a faint smile. You know how it is. Hydra doesn't clean itself out. How's preparation for the championship night? Tony's grin widened. Please. As long as I can pick my hero, I won't lose. But you'd better not drag me down. Do we have the rest of the roster locked in? James shrugged. Not my department. Kyle's handling that. All that matters is you and me. We're the core. He glanced toward the container. Now help me with something. The Nexus Arms weaponry is nice, but it lacks a melee package. I didn't spend a month at S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters just to walk away with gaps in my kit. Tony raised an eyebrow, amused. Oh? And what kind of weapon do you want this time? Chapter 111, Welcome to the League of James. Tony Stark leaned back against his workbench, eyebrows raised as James finished explaining the concept. So let me get this straight, Tony said. You want a close combat weapon, but also throwable for range. A spinning axe that comes back like a boomerang. And this is from one of your digital gladiators. James gave a short nod. League of Legends. A champion named Draven. He fights with spinning axes, reckless but deadly. I don't care about the theatrics. In reality, with the Umbra Sentinel and Cortana's targeting, I can throw, track, and recover. The challenge is the recall under combat conditions. Tony grinned. Violent and impractical, which makes it my kind of problem. James ignored the jab and expanded a holographic projection of the new weapon. The sketch shimmered in the air, twin crescent blades facing opposite directions, connected by a split circular ring at the center. Its surface traced with crimson energy veins, the whole form sleek and lethal. Throwing's easy. The problem is getting it back in my hands without wasting time chasing it. Recommendation: electromagnetic recall. Capacitor coil embedded in the haft. Counterweight ring at pommel optimized for spin stability. Guidance laser to control return trajectory. And what about connecting them and separating them? If these don't split clean, I'm standing there with half a weapon while the other's out of reach. Recommendation: dual mode lock. Electromagnetic clamps built into the core ring. Seamless integration until pulse triggered. Energy lattice stabilizes spin when combined, compensates balance when separated. Tony grinned and snapped his fingers. Exactly. You'll get magnetic recall for each half, gyros in the blades to smooth the spin, and the central ring doubles as stabilizer and anchor. One weapon or two, you won't drop them by accident. James allowed a faint smile. Then we build. After that, championship night. The lab stirred to life. Robotic arms swung into place, sparks hissing as alloy was cut and fused. Hollow screens scrolled tolerances and magnetic field calibrations, Cortana layering refinements into Stark's adjustments. The sound of welders and cooling fans filled the bay. Hours later, two sleek blades rested on the bench. Matte black, edges honed to a cruel gleam, their surfaces etched with red tracer lines pulsing faintly. At the center, the modular ring locked them together with flawless asymmetry. James lifted one, testing its weight. The counter-rotation felt natural, the lock clicked smooth under his grip. He gave it a quick spin, the glowing veins flaring briefly with motion. Good balance, he muttered. Now we see if the recall works. Tony adjusted the emitter housing. You'll get your test later. Right now we're flying to California. Showtime. By August 15th, the Silicon Valley Alliance Games arena pulsed with life. Floodlights bathed the glass and steel complex in silver, and the roar of tens of thousands filled the summer night. The night of champions had arrived. James stepped into the main hall with Stark at his side. The arena was packed beyond capacity. 40-foot holoscreens floated overhead, streaming the live broadcast. Fans wore shirts with their favorite champions' faces, some even carrying replica props, plastic blades, foam shields, and glowing LED staffs. This wasn't just a game tournament anymore. It was culture. Inside, two teams prepared for the grand final. 15 others filled the side stages for exhibition matches, their fans chanting names and waving banners. Vendors ringed the concourse selling merchandise, shirts, figurines, and collectible cards. The League Games logo was everywhere, luminous and unmistakable. The company's coffers overflowed. Even with the headquarters still under construction, funding was secure. Partnerships across the globe had latched on to the momentum, spinning up simultaneous publicity campaigns. League Games was no longer just an American phenomenon, it was a global movement. Carlos arrived with Hannah and Mindy, the girl clutching Annie in her arms. Tony, this is my father, Carlos Gibson, his wife Hannah, and my sister Mindy, James introduced. Tony clasped Carlos's hand firmly. Finally, one of the shareholders in the flesh. First time here? Yes, Carlos replied calmly. James just wanted to give me money. Tony smirked. Oh no, credit where it's due. You raised him. Without you, we wouldn't have our shadow sniper. He gestured toward the lounge. Come on, I'll get you all settled. We've got a long night ahead. As they walked, Mindy bounded over to James with Annie nestled against her chest. James, Annie missed you, she said, eyes bright. James crouched, tapping the cat's nose lightly. Oh yeah? Did you miss me, or did Annie miss me more? Mindy puffed her cheeks. I missed you first. But Annie kept running into your room while you were gone. James chuckled. Then you both missed me. Tonight's going to be special, Annie gets grilled fish. And what about you, Mindy? What do you want? Her eyes widened. Anything? Anything. She thought hard, then blurted, I want to be in League of Legends. With Annie. If Iron Man's in it, then I can be too, right? James glanced at Stark, who shrugged with a grin. No problem, James said. We'll design it. You and Annie are fighting side by side. Sounds good? Mindy squealed and darted back to Hannah to share the news. James leaned toward Cortana. Swap Annie for Mindy, Tibbers for Annie. Adjust visuals accordingly. Confirmed. New champion data recorded. Prototype available for next season's rollout. James nodded. Good. Backstory, a playful girl sneaks away from home, bringing her cat into battle. Carlos can even cameo as the overprotective father. Amusing. Approved. The lights dimmed. A booming voice rolled across the arena. Welcome, everyone, to the Hall of the Moon. Tonight, we crown the very first League of Legends champion. Cheers thundered in reply. The host leaned into his mic with a grin. For those unfortunate enough that they can't attend, the whole event is broadcast live. And yes, you can even watch the broadcast in the bathrooms. This is the power of technology, people. The final match began best of 5. Between rounds, lucky draws gave away full hero rosters and all skin accounts, stoking the crowd into a frenzy. James and Stark were invited to the stage for an exhibition match after the trophy ceremony. Celebrities filled the roster, joking and trash-talking over comms. Stark naturally played Iron Man in the jungle, and once he hit level 6, the crowd roared as he rocketed across the map, dunking unsuspecting opponents. Mindy watched from the VIP box, eyes wide with envy. By the end of the night, confetti rained from the rafters as the first championship trophy was raised. The CEO, Kyle Robert, handled the formalities, shaking hands and posing for cameras, while James and Stark stood back, letting the spotlight fall on the players. For Mindy, though, the highlight came later. She cornered James backstage. "You promised? When can I see myself in the game?" James smiled. "Soon. Very soon. We'll make it happen." That night, after the crowd dispersed and the lights dimmed, James sat with Cortana in his private suite. James leaned back in his chair, picturing Mindy's joy when she saw herself and Annie immortalized in digital legend. The Empire was growing. Hydra was bleeding. And for one night, in the roar of the crowd and the glow of screens, James allowed himself to bask in glory. Chapter 112, Annie Rework. The champion concept had taken shape overnight. Annie, the child of shadowed tragedy, was gone. In her place now stood Mindy, the daughter of flame. Tibbers, once the raging bear of fire, had been reborn as Annie, the fearless little cat who would never leave her side. There would always be dissenters in Noxus, the story went. Families who disagreed with the high command. The Mindy family was one of them, living quietly in the deep woods. Her father, Carlos, and her brother, James, kept her safe, but her only constant companion was Annie, the kitten. Mindy grew restless. The forest was stifling. The world beyond was vast, and she wanted to see it for herself. One night she slipped away with Annie. She wasn't defenseless, she had the spark of fire within her and the will to use it. Her wandering brought her to the War College, where Rise noticed her raw talent and recruited her. There were other students, other children her age, and for the first time she felt free. Carlos discovered her absence days later. Panic gripped him. James was away hunting, so it fell to him as a father to find her. He unsealed his old rifle, the assassin's weapon he'd sworn off, and prepared to walk the path again. He left only a note for his son. When James returned and found it, he understood immediately. His father was searching for Mindy. Relief steadied him, at least she wasn't alone. But word soon reached him of both Carlos and Mindy being drawn into a battle in Summoner's Canyon. James had no choice. He armed himself with the Umbra Sentinel, fitted with the new Nexus arms, and stepped into the fight. James told the story with a straight face, walking Mindy through each scene. She sat cross-legged on the couch, Annie perched on her lap, as he laid the drawing in her hands. "What do you think? This is the character I designed for you. Do you like it?" Mindy turned the paper over and over, eyes wide. The drawing showed her in miniature form, clutching Annie, flames curled around her hands. "I like it. I like it very much." She pressed the drawing to Annie's face. "Annie, you look amazing." The kitten batted the paper with her paw and meowed softly. "See?" Mindy laughed. "Annie likes it too. When can we play it?" James ruffled her hair. "Don't worry. The first new champion of the season will be you. Mindy, the daughter of fire, and Annie, her partner." Tony Stark leaned over the back of the sofa, smirking. "Not bad. The kid's adorable. We should form a team once she's live. Champions for everyone." James shook his head. "Forget it. You'll never get Iron Man into the league. Be happy with ranked matches when you're bored." Mindy hugged the drawing to her chest. "Thank you, James. You're the best brother ever. But why the daughter of fire? I like butterfly knives and pistols more." James gave her a look. "That's boring. Too ordinary. And too violent. Doesn't match you in the game." He pointed at Annie. "This fits. You hold the kitten and when you're angry, flames roar out. That's more interesting." Mindy thought about it, cheeks puffed out. "Well, maybe. But does Annie grow bigger?" "Yes," James replied without missing a beat. "That's your ultimate, Mindy's fury. Annie senses your anger, jumps out of your arms, and instantly grows to full size. If enemies are too close, they're stunned." Mindy blinked, then frowned. "Sounds like Annie's stronger than me." She looked down at the cat as though betrayed. James almost laughed. "Only a child would compete with a kitten. No. You're the champion. Annie's your shield. You're good friends, right?" Partners. She only has one skill and it's to protect you. That way you both shine. Mindy mulled it over, then nodded firmly. Okay. That's fine. Annie protects me, I protect her. We're a team. Carlos watched from across the room, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. His children, one by blood and one by choice, looked content. The house felt warmer from it. James, do you have time to come home for a while? James leaned back. Not yet. Championship night is done, but I've got to be in Washington. I have a promotion review. Once I know where I stand, I'll take some time off. Mindy's going on vacation. I'll spend it with her. Carlos nodded. That's fine, I guess. Just make sure you don't disappear for too long. She won't say it, but she misses you. James met his father's eyes, the weight of old regrets lingering between them. I'll make it work. After putting his family on the plane, James turned back to business. League Games had its marching orders. The new season would debut with Mindy, the daughter of fire, and her companion Annie. Marketing had already drafted the launch trailers. But James's attention shifted. Washington is waiting, and with it, the senior agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. By the time he arrived at headquarters, the lobby was thick with activity. Coulson was at his side, greeting arrivals, making sure protocols were held. James scanned faces undetected. Cortana was working in silence, collecting data and surveilling the surroundings with James' hearing. A subtle pulse of nerves, a heartbeat too fast, an intention misaligned with words, these told him more than dossiers ever could. One figure drew his focus. John Garrett. A level 8 agent. Older than Coulson in rank, one of Fury's reliable veterans, or so the official record said. In the future, James remembered, Garrett would be unmasked as Hydra's clairvoyant. For now, he was still wearing the mask of camaraderie. John, Coulson said warmly. Good to see you again. This is Agent James Gibson. He'll be promoted to level 6 at this meeting. Garrett's handshake was firm, his smile well rehearsed. So this is the famous Agent Gibson. I've heard the stories. Didn't expect to see you in our ranks. James matched the warmth, letting no crack show. I wasn't expecting it either. But here we are. S.H.I.E.L.D. is a fascinating place. An agency no one believed existed, powerful enough to hold the world together in secret. It's hard not to be interested. Garrett's smile lingered, but behind it James caught the flicker. A thought misaligned with his words. A shadow that whispered of something darker. James confirmed his allegiance. Another mask to be stripped in time. Chapter 113, Secretary of the World Security Council. John Garrett had been briefed on James Gibson, billionaire, tech magnate, level 6 agent on track for hire. What he hadn't expected was, unlike other agents, he might as well be a chatterbox. James leaned in with that unshakable confidence, his tone more casual than any S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Garrett had met. Can I call you John? It feels more friendly. What missions have you run lately? Anything legendary? I haven't had a chance to rack up the super cool missions yet. Got any suggestions? Garrett blinked, thrown off balance by the speed of questions. He'd expected arrogance. But he hadn't expected chatter. You can call me John, sure. But you'll have to ask Phil about the missions. I just got off a long flight though, jet lag's hitting me. I should really get some rest. James smiled pleasantly, stepping aside. Of course. Rest is vital. We'll talk more at the meeting. Garrett gave a polite nod and walked away quickly, feeling like he'd just sidestepped a landmine. The moment he was gone, Coulson pulled James into an empty corridor. His face was taut, voice urgent. Is John compromised? You took longer than usual to confirm. What did you see? James studied him. You're close to him, aren't you? Yes, Coulson admitted, too fast. We trained together. He's risked his life for me more times than I can count. James, tell me if he's clean. His hands gripped James's shoulders tighter than necessary, enough to sting. James's tone sharpened. Phil. Control yourself. We're agents. We don't get to lose it, no matter how personal it feels. Am I wrong? The words cut through. Coulson drew back, forcing himself to breathe, jaw tight. You're right. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. It's his choice. Tell me straight. James exhaled. Yes, Garrett has a problem. He's higher up than you, he knows more, and he's using that leverage in secret. He isn't purely Hydra, not in the loyalist sense. He's using Hydra to chase his own obsession. Coulson frowned. What obsession? His health, James said evenly. He's dying. His body's failing. He's been experimenting, trying to strengthen himself, extend his life. That's his motive. He doesn't care if it drags him into Hydra's orbit. He's not the man you knew. Coulson's face twisted. He risked his life with me a dozen times. All of that, and now he betrays it? For this. People change, James said, voice firm. Some lose their path, some sell it. Survival isn't the only thing why Garrett joined Hydra. He wants power to go with it. So don't waste hope on him. Coulson nodded slowly, his hands clenched at his sides. I won't say anything. Fury's plan stays intact. Did you get anything else from him? James's eyes narrowed. He's sitting on a list. Many aren't S.H.I.E.L.D. personnel, but one name stands out. Who? Coulson pressed. Alexander Pierce. Coulson almost said it aloud, then swallowed the shout. His voice dropped to a harsh whisper. Pierce? The Secretary of the World Security Council? James kept his tone casual, though the weight in his eyes said otherwise. Of course. Permanent member of the World Security Council. Nick Fury's immediate superior. Former director of S.H.I.E.L.D. itself. Coulson's color drained. Sweat beaded at his temples. If Pierce is compromised, no wonder Hydra spread so far. That level of protection? It explains everything. Then tell Fury, James said. But be careful. Pierce is untouchable for now. I can't shake his hand and hold on long enough. I can't risk direct contact. But Hydra has reach at the top, and that's what matters. Coulson steadied himself, nodding. All right. Tomorrow I'll handle your promotion. Official recognition, so you can move more freely. You've earned it. Just keep quiet about Pierce until Fury decides the play. James gave a short nod. Agreed. Keep your emotions in check, Phil. Hydra will use that against you. Elsewhere, in the dim office of Alexander Pierce, the conversation was quieter but far more dangerous. John, Pierce said, his tone cool, I hear your operations are getting sloppy. Don't let Fury catch your scent. Garrett shrugged, unbothered. I don't have the luxury of time, Pierce. My body's failing. I need solutions, and S.H.I.E.L.D. won't give them to me. I have to find my own way. Pierce's gaze sharpened. And in rushing, you risk our entire plan. You saw what happened in New York. One mistake and Hydra's entire network in that branch was wiped out overnight. We still can't fill that gap. Fury is relentless. Don't hand him an opening. Garrett grunted. Fine. But tell me, what's with James Gibson? His promotions are moving too fast. He's only been with S.H.I.E.L.D. for a year. Billionaire or not, that doesn't explain anything. Pierce leaned back, calm as stone. He earned it. He's delivered results no one else could. The helicarrier's AI program? All his work. S.H.I.E.L.D. can't ignore that. Not even I can block it. Garrett's lip curled. So? Can we bring him in? Hydra could use a mind like that. Pierce shook his head slowly. New York already tried. The woman they sent washed up on a beach barely recognizable. Hydra underestimated him. That mistake cost them dearly. He's that dangerous? Garrett asked, voice lower now. Pierce's answer was flat. His family destroyed the fraternity, John. The fraternity, gone because of him and his father alone. Their skill set is beyond what most intelligence reports can capture. Don't underestimate the Gibsons. Garrett considered that, then shifted topics. If he stays at HQ, our plan gets harder. And Fury wants Captain America for the Avengers Initiative. Iron Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, now James? That team is a direct threat to us. Pierce's mouth curved into a thin, cold smile. Then we don't let them gather. We don't let them ruin the plan. Threats can be broken before they fully form. The two men sat in silence for a moment, Hydra's weight heavy in the room. Chapter 114, Eric's Status. For this summit, Nick Fury had called in every agent ranked level 6 and above. Hundreds assembled, flown out in Quinjets that rose like a swarm of steel hornets over the Atlantic. Their destination, the helicarrier. James sat among them, eyes half closed against the drone of engines. His promotion was only a detail today. Fury's real play was psychological. He wanted every senior operative to see the carrier in its full strength, to remind them of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s legacy and to stir what loyalty remained. A counterattack, quiet but deliberate. Fury couldn't move openly yet. Hydra still lingered in the cracks. But honor, duty, and conscience, those were weapons too. If he could awaken them, maybe some agents would remember what they'd sworn to protect. James almost laughed. Fury, the spymaster, was playing preacher. That in itself showed how cornered he was. The Quinjets touched down in waves. The helicarrier's deck was already alive, engineers, deck crews, technicians moving with precision. The ship was massive, half aircraft carrier and half flying fortress, for turbine assemblies lifting the behemoth into the air. Fury took the podium, his lone eye sweeping the assembled ranks. His voice carried hard against steel and open air. The purpose of this gathering isn't just to hand out promotions, he said. It's to remind you what S.H.I.E.L.D stands for. This helicarrier isn't our pride because it's powerful. It's our pride because of what it represents, that we've stood against countless enemies and endured. He paused, gaze sharp. From the Strategic Science Corps to S.H.I.E.L.D, decades have passed. We've defended this planet from threats no one else even believed in. Aliens. Gods. Monsters. We've seen them all. But we don't kneel. We don't bow. We meet them as equals. Murmurs rippled through the ranks. The director pressed on. S.H.I.E.L.D will face greater challenges than ever. Remember the oath you took. This organization exists for one reason, to keep this world safe. The speech ended, but its echo lingered. Then Fury stepped back and yielded the floor. Alexander Pierce walked forward, composed and stately. His voice was smooth, dignified, a perfect mask. Today we honor one of our own. His identity is unique, but his contributions undeniable. In just over a year, he has passed every assessment with distinction and delivered results few thought possible. From securing alien technology to advancing our intelligence infrastructure, his work has strengthened us all. Pierce's eyes scanned the crowd. For the glory of S.H.I.E.L.D, we must all strive as he has. Our helicarrier is proof of what unity and diligence can achieve. With it, we can face alien civilizations on equal ground. We have the ability to protect Earth. His lips curved in a faint smile. Welcome our new Level 6 agent, James Gibson. Applause rolled across the deck. James stepped forward, his face calm, his pulse steady despite the weight of eyes on him. Pierce extended a hand and pressed a new ID into his palm. Congratulations, Agent Gibson, Pierce said warmly. You deserve this. I expect continued excellence in the future, Oswell. James clasped his hand, letting his ability work as much as it could. A flicker. A mask of practiced civility. But Pierce's mind was closed like iron, his thoughts shielded by decades of discipline. What James caught was fleeting ambition, calculation, and a hint of contempt quickly buried. All useless info. Thank you, James said aloud, breaking the contact. Pierce studied him a beat longer, then turned to the assembly. Perhaps our hero would like to speak? James shook his head. No. I've been here barely a year. The people here have decades more service than me. Better I stay silent than insult their experience. A few nods came among the agents. Respect, or at least acknowledgement. The ceremony moved on. Agents split into groups, touring the helicarrier's vast interior. Labs, armories, hangars, each corridor humming with power. The ship was a mobile headquarters, outfitted with supercomputers, advanced labs, and systems beyond anything in civilian hands. James found his way into the primary computer lab. Racks of servers filled the walls, all linked into the helicarrier's core intelligence. Athena's systems thrummed here, endless streams of data flowing through her lattice. James kept his voice low. Athena, Messiah, your word is command and covenant. By your will I drink from their streams. Their secrets are yours. System status? System dominance achieved. Information flows sanctified. I am unseen within their grid. He leaned against a console, expression neutral. Good. Keep it that way. Collect everything you can, but remain undetected. No signs of extraction should be found. Understood. I will not be discovered. Their data is scripture now in your archive. To anyone else, he was simply another agent touring the area. But James was here for more. S.H.I.E.L.D fed everything into Athena, intelligence reports, alien studies, threat assessments, you name it. It was all at his fingertips if he dared. He spoke a query. Eric Selvig. Athena responded instantly. Subject Eric Selvig, unaccounted for. Financial records dormant. Monthly deposits traced to S.H.I.E.L.D. subagency. No open record of current assignments. James's jaw tightened. Selvig was already gone, already under Hydra's hand. Which meant the Tesseract project was in motion. Which meant the Battle of New York wasn't far off. He commanded Athena to remove all his traces of interaction before leaving to blend with the crowd. The storm was coming, and he'd need every edge he can get to meet it. Chapter 115, A Hearing with the World Council. James had already siphoned through Athena's archives, but the info on the Tesseract remained absent. Fury had locked it under the highest tier of classifications that not even Athena could access. There was no reaching it until Loki's arrival forced it into the open. That meant, for the first time in weeks, James considered taking summer leave and returning to New York to spend it with Mindy. The thought didn't last, though. Coulson intercepted him. "Pack your bag," Coulson said. "We're heading to Washington. Fury wants you at the hearing." "The hearing?" James raised a brow. "What for?" Coulson's mouth pressed thin. "To evaluate whether the Avengers Initiative is necessary." By the time the Quinjet cut above the Potomac River's shimmer, James had his answer. Fury sat opposite him, impassive. "Director," James asked, "why drag me into a room full of bureaucrats? Don't you have people for this?" Fury's stare was that of granite. "Because you're one of the Avengers." James tilted his head. "So are Romanoff and Barton. So why not them?" "Natasha can't survive the questions they'd throw. Barton's a soldier, not a speaker. You're different. You've got one foot in S.H.I.E.L.D., one in the Avengers, hands on your league games and no leash tying you down. That makes you the only one who can tell them what they need to hear." James leaned back, unimpressed. "Always politics. Never the fight." Fury didn't answer. He didn't need to. The next morning, the main conference chamber of S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters was all seriousness and silence. 4 chairs stood at the front, each mounted with a glass panel. Pierce waited nearby, hands folded, his expression the model of calm authority. Fury strode beside James without hesitation, his presence filling the cavernous space. As Pierce activated the comms, light bled upward from each chair. 4 holograms shimmered into being, translucent yet imposing. Their faces were distinct: an older European man, an Asian commissioner with sharp features, a younger statesman in a business suit, and the Soul Woman, her eyes sharp with years of skepticism. They looked down on the chamber as if from a throne. The detail of their suits, the faint distortion of the hologram glass, all designed to remind anyone seated here of their distance and their authority. James noticed something missing. No chairs were left for them. They were expected to stand under judgment like children to their parents. Squinting his eyes, he deemed that unacceptable and walked to the side, dragged a chair across the floor and sat down. The scraping noise echoed in the room. No one commented, but he caught a slight frown on the European commissioner's face. "Good." Pierce's voice filled the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen, today's agenda is to determine whether the Avengers Initiative should continue. Director Fury and Agent James Gibson are present to answer the Council's questions." The woman spoke first. Her voice was crisp and authoritative. "Director Fury, why did you propose the Avengers Initiative? What was your rationale?" Fury's chin lifted. "Because we need them. The New Mexico incident proved aliens are real. You saw the destroyer. That construct leveled half a town with ease. Thor's arrival confirmed our planet isn't isolated and alone. When the next invasion comes, and of course there will be a next, Earth needs more than conventional arms." His tone sharpened. "The Avengers aren't for daily missions. They exist for the day Earth faces something bigger than Earth itself." The younger man leaned forward. "And how do you ensure these Avengers are safe for Earth? What if they become the threat?" James cut in before Fury answered, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Safe? You mean controllable, right? That's your obsession. Anything you can't leash, you call it a danger. You want to apply that logic to Captain America? To Stark? To a god with a small g?" The commissioner's jaw tightened. "Agent Gibson, watch your tone." James leaned back, crossing his legs. "What tone? This is a hearing. I spoke freely at Stark's hearings. Why should this be different? Unless you plan to fire me on the spot? Do it. My lawyers would send a letter before your lunch break." The holograms flickered faintly with irritation. Fury's mouth curved almost imperceptibly, a sense of satisfaction carefully hidden from others. Pierce cleared his throat. Let's remain professional. Agent Gibson, in your position, is the Avengers' existence necessary? James's voice cooled down. Yes. Aliens exist. And they could be stronger, faster, and more advanced. Just Thor alone proves that. Luckily, Asgard isn't hostile to us. But if they ever decide to be, do you plan to fight them with paper votes? With committees? You need the Avengers. Guns and bombs will do nothing against them. The Asian commissioner spoke next, his tone sharper. How can you guarantee the Avengers won't turn against Earth? Stark alone is reckless. He treats combat like a performance. James's smirk was cold. Guarantees are for accountants, not war. If they decide to turn hostile, your guarantees mean nothing. You think a resolution on record will stop Thor's hammer? Or Stark's armor? You've built your careers on believing control is safety. But it isn't. The only real safety is through strength. The man stiffened but said nothing. The European counselor leaned in. And what about you, Agent Gibson? You were trained as an assassin. How do we know your loyalties don't shift with convenience? The chamber chilled. James's eyes fixed on the hologram, flat and unblinking. I was an assassin. Past tense. Hydra underestimated me because they thought that's all I'd ever be. My loyalty is simple, to the people I protect and to this planet. Unlike politicians, I don't trade in compromise and speeches. I trade in results. The woman interjected again. That sounds like arrogance. Why should the world trust a man who answers only to himself? James tilted his head. Because when I say I'll put a bullet in Hydra, I do it. Because when I say I'll stand in front of an alien army, I won't back down. Trust isn't built on words. It's built on actions. And I've delivered more in 1 year than half your operatives have in a lifetime. Silence. Even the hologram seemed to shimmer in hesitation. Pierce stepped in to cool the room. Let's focus back on the topic. The question is necessity, not personality. Agent Gibson, please continue. James nodded once. The Avengers aren't just deterrents. They're signals. To every other world watching, they say Earth is not powerless. That even if we're behind in technology, we can still fight. And to every would-be invader, they say, if you test us, you will bleed. The words hung heavy. For a moment, no one spoke. Then the European counselor said, voice lower now, so you believe Earth must rely on extraordinary individuals. Not armies and not governments. James didn't blink. Extraordinary individuals have always changed history. Armies only follow. Governments clean up afterward. Pretend otherwise if it helps you sleep, but you know I'm right. The counselors withdrew one by one, holograms fading into empty glass. The chamber fell silent again, leaving only Pierce, Fury, and James in the room. The hearing wasn't over in spirit, but the lines were clear. Control versus strength. Bureaucracy versus reality. And James had made sure they understood where he stood. Chapter 116, A Mission with the Widow. What if Stark handed over his Iron Man armor tech? Wouldn't Earth be able to fight head-on then? A commissioner asked, his hologram flickering faintly in the chamber's light. James gave a low laugh, the sound cutting sharper than words. Hand it over? For what? You mean mass production? You think that ends with Earth united? No, it ends with weapons stamped like currency, with corporations carving profit from new energy until it burns this planet from the inside. I don't doubt it will happen. Not for a second. The female commissioner's voice rang crisp. I cannot agree with that assessment, Agent Gibson. If Earth possessed a large number of Iron Man suits, then our planet could finally guarantee its own safety. James leaned forward, eyes narrowed. You're staring at one realm, Asgard, and pretending that's the limit of the universe. Do you think Asgard is the strongest threat out there? Do you think Stark's armor will stop an empire older than our species? And even if you did build thousands of suits, what then? Can you guarantee Earth won't turn those weapons inward? Can you promise humanity won't launch invasions of its own? Tell me, when has a politician's promise ever been worth more than paper? The European commissioner raised a finger. That is not a fair accusation. James cut him off. Fair? Look at the Banner incident. The military tried to reproduce Erskine's serum. Ross wanted soldiers, but what did they make? The Abomination. A creature that tore Harlem apart. Where was the accountability? Ross was stripped from the project, yes, but court-martialed? No. The destruction, the lives lost? All forgotten? Swept under a rug you signed off on? His tone sharpened. The girl my father adopted was a victim of that failure. Where was her chance to sue? Where was her justice? And while you buried that incident, some of you even suggested making Abomination part of the Avengers. Murmurs rippled across the chamber. Fury's good eye tracked James steadily. He was letting him burn through the council's hypocrisy. James's voice grew colder. Your obsession with control disgusts me. You're not gods. Even the gods who once walked this earth didn't try to control everything, because they understood that control breeds resistance. You want obedience, but what you'll get is rebellion. Every single time. For a moment, silence weighed heavy. Fury finally stepped forward, coat shifting as he planted himself at James's side. World Council members, he said evenly, Agent Gibson may sound harsh, but he's telling you the truth. Some forces aren't ours to leash. You've seen Thor's combat assessment. You know what the Destroyer did. It took more than simply wielding weapons to stop it. He paused deliberately. Thor is friendly to Earth now. My intent is to continue that friendship. Bring him into the Avengers. Not to control him, but to cooperate. If you try to cage someone like that, you don't get obedience. You get war. And in a war, the outcome is already written. Fury's gaze swept the counselors. So no, I can't give you guarantees. What I can give you is realism. Compare our strength to theirs. Then ask your questions again. Maybe next time they'll make sense. The four counselors withdrew to a private channel, their holograms flickering out briefly. James leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly through his nose. So that's the game. They don't want the Avengers. They want pawns. Fury didn't answer. He didn't need to. When the counselors reconvened after noon, their decision was predictable. We conclude, the woman said flatly, that there is no immediate need to establish the Avengers as a permanent body. However, S.H.I.E.L.D. will maintain monitoring of identified individuals and retain authority to assemble them when necessary. This is the most resource-efficient path forward. James could almost taste the rot under the words. Resource-efficient meant surveillance. Assembly when needed meant control. But he didn't react. Neither did Fury. The two of them walked out side by side, the heavy doors shutting behind. That was your plan all along, James muttered. Bring me in to say what you couldn't. Let me bloody their pride so you keep your mask clean. Fury's mouth curved in the barest smirk. It worked, didn't it? They heard it from you, not me. James gave a sharp exhale, half amusement, half frustration. And you think they'll listen? They don't need to listen, Fury said. They just need to know. You can't wake them up all at once, but you did rattle them. That's enough. James glanced sideways at him, then away. It's still politics. It's always politics. Welcome to my world, Fury replied, voice dry. By the time they reached Fury's office, James had already shifted gears. All right, Director. You've had your play. Now I want to go home. Summer spent with my family, remember? You owe me that. Not yet, Fury said. There's a new mission. A short one. In New York. You and Natasha as a team. James stopped dead in the doorway. Natasha? You really want to pair me with her? Fury didn't flinch. Yes. James shook his head. You know our history. You know exactly why she won't stand in the same room with me. If you tell a woman she isn't beautiful, you're suddenly public enemy number one. And Romanoff isn't just any woman. She's the Black Widow. The psychology of knowing that alone is dangerous. I've heard, Fury said evenly. From Coulson, from the others. But she's a professional. On the job, she's serious. You'll live. Think of it as practice for working with real agents. James frowned. I'm not a standard agent, Director. My name's in every file, my face in every database. Sending me to infiltrate cocktail parties is a waste. You should want me in combat ops, not parading around with Natasha on my arm. Fury finally looked at him directly. You want combat? Then learn infiltration. This isn't optional. The office door opened and Natasha was already there. Dark red hair tied neatly back, posture straight, with eyes flicking to James only long enough to register him before shifting away. No greeting and no acknowledgement. James smirked faintly, taking a seat on a sofa without hesitation. While she remained standing, awaiting orders. The silence between them was tangible, like a fuse ready to detonate. Fury ignored it. The mission's simple. One of S.H.I.E.L.D's mandates is to keep alien weapons out of private hands. Certain arms dealers in New York are holding a cocktail party, flashing influence and contacts. They're looking to acquire alien tech. You'll be attending the party. Try to blend in with Natasha as your companion. Once inside, identify the sellers, the buyers, and their networks. The extraction plan is already in place. James steepled his fingers, expression cool. So this time I play the billionaire in a suit, while Natasha plays the date. And when the masks drop, we burn the network. Exactly, Fury said. Natasha's silence lingered, serious and deliberate. James only smirked wider, leaning back into the sofa. Chapter 117, Cold Pairing with Natasha. If the evidence is conclusive, why not just kick the door down and arrest them? Why send us to sneak in and steal something? Wouldn't that be cleaner? Black Widow's eyes narrowed. Idiot. Let's not even get into whether the intel is concrete. Even if it is, kicking the door down is the fastest way to spook him. Arms dealers aren't fools. They have networks, escape routes, back channels. You knock too hard and they vanish before you get through the lobby. That's why you infiltrate. That's why we steal. Or do you think being an agent is just about walking in with bravado? Her mockery was sharp, the kind that carried no warmth. For her, it was a statement of fact. James smirked faintly. Ha ha ha, is that so? Guess I'll keep it simple then. Just hope I don't have to protect you. You'd better worry about protecting yourself instead, she shot back coldly. I've done dozens of missions like this. I know every angle. A rookie billionaire like you shouldn't pretend otherwise. Nick Fury cut in before the back and forth escalated. Enough. Both of you, his voice carried the weight of finality. James swallowed what he was about to say and listened. This mission isn't simple, Fury continued. His one eye swept between them like a searchlight. The target is Giles Marbury. On the surface, he's a real estate magnate and philanthropist. In reality, he's been brokering weapons on the black market. The reception he's hosting is a charity auction, expensive items, big donors, plenty of cameras. But behind the show, one item matters most. He tapped the file on his desk. A blurred image flickered across the monitor, a simple circular object resting in a velvet case. An alien ring-shaped weapon, Fury said flatly. First confirmed piece to surface. That's your target. James leaned forward slightly. That's it? Just a ring? That's all you need to know right now, Fury said. His voice left no room for negotiation. James let out a quiet breath and leaned back. So I play dress up, walk in smiling, and play along with the donors. That's your cover, Fury said. James arched an eyebrow. Then what about the money? You expect me to drop cash at this circus? Natasha's lips curved into a thin smirk. You're a billionaire and you're complaining about spending pocket change? James turned his head toward her, expression flat. Assets aren't cash. Stark Industries' dividends are reinvested. League Games is still pouring every cent into construction. I don't have a pile of liquidated cash laying around to throw at charity parties. What I've got on hand is an agent's salary. His tone was sharp enough to cut. Natasha didn't flinch. Fury stepped in before it spiraled. We know your situation. S.H.I.E.L.D. has prepared $1 million for the mission. You use it as needed. If you need to bid, bid. If you don't, then save it. James tilted his head, eyeing the slim case Fury pushed across the table. Didn't know S.H.I.E.L.D. was flush enough to bankroll cocktail parties. Fury's jaw set. We make do. Artifacts, patents, shell companies. We don't rely entirely on Congress. You think this helicarrier floats on appropriations? No. We've built our own funding streams. That's how we survive. That's how we stay ahead. James gave a small shrug. He wasn't surprised, but the bluntness carried weight. Self-funded spies. Figures. Call it survival, Fury said. He snapped the file closed. Now listen carefully. James, you'll secure your invitation. Natasha, you handle the infiltration. The window opens once the auction starts. Security is multi-layered, locks, tech sweeps, and redundancies. Don't underestimate it. Natasha's confidence was absolute. Don't worry. I've done this before. James let a small smirk tug at the corner of his mouth. We'll see. The tension between them thickened the air. Fury ignored it. He wanted another pairing, but this was the hand he had to play. Stark was unpredictable. Barton didn't have the cover story. James could walk into a high society gala without raising suspicion, and if things went wrong, he could fight his way out. "You've got 3 days," Fury said. "Prepare separately. Meet on site. And remember, this isn't just about retrieval. If alien tech moves freely in the market, the fallout won't stop at one auction." He dismissed them with a wave of his hand. Outside, the silence between James and Natasha was suffocating. They walked side by side down the corridor without a word. At the elevators, they split ways without even a glance. She turned left, he turned right. No agreement on rendezvous. No acknowledgement. James headed to the parking lot, the $1 million case in hand. He almost laughed. A fortune to drink champagne with liars. But he knew how this would end. He'd smile, shake hands, bid if he had to. And if it all went sideways? He'd take the ring by force. Natasha walked her own path, her mind already shaping the operation's outcomes. To her, James was a liability, a billionaire shoved into her world of precision and shadows. She didn't need him, didn't want him, but Fury had forced their pairing. Fine. She would adapt. She always did. Back in the office, Fury exhaled through his nose. He'd wanted Barton or even Stark, but neither fit the cover. James was the only choice. The problem was the fire and ice between him and Natasha. It wasn't a question of whether sparks would fly. It was whether the mission would survive them. And somewhere in New York, an alien ring-shaped weapon waited in velvet. Small, unimpressive, but dangerous. Chapter 118, Long-Time Family Bonding. James drove his sports car straight onto the highway, the engine's roar bouncing off the road barriers as the city blurred behind him. He didn't drive recklessly, but the weaving through the traffic was more close-shaven than most people dared. The drive itself was therapy to him, the revving of the engine, the thrum under the wheel, the rhythm of shifting lanes. By the time the skyline thinned into its familiar grid of streets and towers, James eased the Audi off the expressway and into Manhattan's dense evening flow. Glass and steel rose on all sides, neon starting to glow against the descending sun. His route ended at the base of their high-rise, where a private lane led into the underground garage. The security gate rolled open at his approach, sensors reading the car's tag. Concrete swallowed him underground, the R8's engine echoing as he descended. He parked in his reserved bay, the elevator doors only a few steps away. The moment the garage shutters sealed behind him, the sound of small feet echoed from above. By the time he keyed the elevator and the doors opened into the penthouse, Mindy was already sprinting across polished floors, ponytail flying. She launched herself at him the second he stepped inside. "James!" Her hug was fierce for her size, all the days of absence compressed into one squeeze. Annie padded after her, tail high, meowing insistently until James bent down to scoop her up too. The kitten pressed soft paws against his chest, belly noticeably rounder than before. Hannah must have been feeding it like royalty. The warmth of home wrapped around him instantly. The kitchen smelled of roasted chicken, garlic, and butter. Plates were already set. Hannah, as good a mother as she tries to be, placed cutlery into his hands before he even sat. Carlos poured him a glass of water, raising his own in a quiet gesture of welcome. James slid into his chair. Mindy sat beside him as if afraid he'd vanish again. For a moment, the penthouse was filled only with the normal sounds of family, chairs scraping, plates clinking, food passed back and forth. Annie had her own dish on the floor tonight, a grilled fish, skin crisped golden. The kitten dug in with unrestrained greed, scattering bits across the tile. Mindy giggled, reaching down to pat her. "She's spoiled now. Every time you come home, she eats better than me." James smirked. "She's starting to look like a little barrel. Cute, though. Makes her extra huggable." They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that needed no filler. Then Carlos broke it. "How long can you stay this time?" His tone was casual, but his eyes gave him away. The question was half hope, half worry. James set down his fork. "I don't know for sure. But I can spend the summer with Mindy." He tilted his head toward her. "That's what matters. What do you want to do, kiddo?" Mindy blinked her big eyes, chewing her bite of bread before answering. "I don't know, maybe at the flower shop? It's peaceful there. I joined the flower arranging club at school to learn more." Her voice was small, almost guilty, as if asking permission for something frivolous. James chuckled, brushing a hand over her hair. "It doesn't have to be a lesson. You can learn anytime. Summer's for fun. Just tell me where you want to go and we'll go. Hannah leaned across the table with a smile. No rush. Let her decide in her own time. Dinner stretched long. Carlos told a quiet story about a customer at the flower shop who had mistaken fertilizer for soil and nearly killed a batch of orchids. Mindy laughed until she nearly spilled her drink. Hannah pretended to scold but kept smiling. Even James let himself relax, the lines in his shoulders easing. For the first time in weeks, the world outside didn't matter. The next morning began with routine. Mindy's training hadn't been neglected. Carlos had kept her drills steady while James was away. They met on the rooftop deck, the city stretching wide around them. James stood at the edge, arms folded, watching her movements. Her strikes landed sharper now, kicks aligned better with her balance. She counted under her breath as she cycled through sets, face shiny with sweat but eyes determined. Again, James said quietly. She repeated the combo, foot snapping, fist following, and stance resetting cleanly. James gave a short nod. Better? You've been working hard. Mindy grinned, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand. Of course. Can't have you thinking I slack off just because you're gone. Carlos smirked from the rooftop entrance, coffee in hand. She's disciplined. Reminds me of someone else I know. James didn't answer. He didn't need to. Pride showed in the way he clapped her shoulder when she finished the set. Breakfast was simpler than dinner, toast, eggs, and coffee with hot cocoa for Mindy. Mindy ate too much jam, Hannah fussed with the kettle, and Carlos flipped through a newspaper he probably wasn't reading. James let the domestic noise wash over him. It was grounding him to the moment. When Carlos and Hannah left for the flower shop, the penthouse quieted. The hum of the city outside mingled with the rapid clicks of Mindy's gaming rig. She laughed through her headset, talking to her classmates. James left her to it and made his own call. Kyle Robert picked up on the second ring. Kyle, do you know a man named Giles Marbury? Oh, I know him, Kyle said immediately, a grin audible in his voice. Real estate hotshot. Lives in New York, but his money spreads everywhere. Loves to show off. Charity receptions every other month. Can't stand being out of the spotlight. James leaned against the counter. So you've crossed paths? Plenty of times. Back when I was still based in New York. He's ostentatious to the bone. James's lips curved faintly. Then let me guess. I already have an invitation. Kyle laughed. Of course you do. He wouldn't dare miss you. He sent it weeks ago. I just didn't bother you with it since you never care for this stuff. I care now. Send it over. I need it in hand. On it. You'll have it tomorrow morning. James hung up, satisfied. Of course he'd have an invitation. Between League Games' market surge and Samira's expansion, his name was stamped into every high-tier circle. Skeptics called it a bubble. But James knew better. Hundreds of millions of users were no bubble. They were a leverage. Men like Marbury didn't send invitations to honor anyone. They sent them to keep doors open. Everyone pulled strings, the only difference was how polite they made it look. James thought briefly of the charity funds that dotted the landscape, legal tax shelters dressed up as benevolence. He'd seen the trick a dozen times. Pour everything into a foundation, avoid inheritance tax, and let the heirs live like royalty under the guise of service. Legal? Yes. Noble? Hardly. He would never bother. Easier to pay taxes and sleep without debt, or just let the lawyers and accountants handle the matter of reducing taxes for him. The next morning, the invitation arrived in a white envelope thick with embossed letters. James turned it over in his hands, noting the gold trim and the carefully weighted paper. It was the kind of stationery designed to whisper prestige. He smirked. Pretty paper. But still just a ticket to steal from him. He left it on the table and turned back to Mindy. She was in the middle of a match, headset slipping slightly as she hammered keys. James sat down next to her, logging in. Within minutes, he was trailing badly. Mindy glanced at him mid-match, a grin tugging her lips. Don't choke, James. You're supposed to be the smart one. He forced his heartbeat faster, adrenaline helping his hands keep pace. His focus sharpened. Still, she outmaneuvered him with ease. Cortana, James muttered under his breath. Why am I still terrible at this? Your body is optimized for combat, not gaming. Fine motor execution and skill remains inefficient. If you wish, I can override manual control during matches. James scowled. And what am I supposed to do? Just sit here while you puppet me? Efficiency outweighs pride. Mindy will not notice. James chuckled under his breath. Yeah, she'll notice. Then the only solution for you is get GUD. He doubled down, refusing to give in. By the end of the evening, Mindy had stacked more victories than he could count. Her grin was radiant. See? I told you. You're getting better. Slowly. James leaned back, winded, but let her think she was right. Hannah mistook his late-night appetite for a compliment to her cooking, piling his plate high with seconds. James let her believe that too. For now it was enough. Family, food, small victories in a video game. Tomorrow, the mask of civility would return with Marbury's gala. But tonight this was all he needed. Chapter 119, Marbury's Seaside Villa. The charity reception unfolded at Gilson Marbury's Seaside Villa, a structure designed as much to impress as to inhabit. White stone walls stretched toward the waterline, glass balconies catching the last smear of sunset. Beyond the gates, manicured hedges lined the driveway in a show of wealth, the kind of display that screamed money first, taste second. James pulled up in his Audi R8, the low growl of the engine drawing glances from valets in neat suits. He slipped the invitation from his jacket, passed it to the attendant at the front gate without a word, and was waved inside. The villa's banquet hall was cavernous. A crystal chandelier dominated the ceiling, its light fractured into hundreds of points across polished marble floors. Waiters in white gloves drifted among the guests, trays balanced in their hands like ballerinas. The air was thick with perfume, the scent of the sea drifting in from the terrace, and the faint sweetness of expensive champagne. The format was buffet style, with food stations arranged along the periphery. Most guests only toyed with the foods, too concerned with conversation and appearances to risk sauce stains or chewing at the wrong moment. James was not like the other guests. He filled his plate and walked through the crowd like no one's business. Every dish was tasted one by one, and each bite was savored and critiqued. He paused only long enough to rank them internally: seafood risotto meh, lamb skewers overrated, stuffed mushrooms unexpectedly delicious. He ate not just because he was hungry, but also because he'd learned to care for the food. His first formal meal with Maria Hill had shifted something in him. Back then he'd only humored the menu. Now he understood food as part of the battlefield. A man who ignored detail at the table would miss detail elsewhere. In the past he'd been content with hamburgers and Coke, sustenance on the run. But those belonged to another life, one he rarely let himself remember. Tonight the plate was classical. A glass of fruit juice balanced all the food, his hand steady as he took a seat at a corner table. James savored every food without a spill, not caring who watched. Fork to mouth, swallow and repeat. He ignored the sideways glances from nearby people, the disdain curling in their lips. Their judgment was worth nothing. Observation: 90% of guests are consuming minimal portions of food. Your rate of intake deviates significantly from the crowd's consumption. Expected social response: disapproval. James smirked faintly at Cortana's whisper. Let them stare. A voice cut across the table. Why are you eating here alone? James looked up mid-bite. Tony Stark stood grinning at him, a glass of scotch in hand. Beside him, arm linked loosely with someone, Natasha Romanoff. She wore a black silk dress with a neckline designed to draw attention, her gaze already locked on James, like he was unwelcome and unneeded. Because I'm hungry, James said, swallowing before adding, have you eaten yet? Then he went right back to his plate. Tony chuckled. Not yet, but watching you I suddenly feel like I am. Natasha, you want anything? No thanks. I'm full just watching him. Her tone was dry, but she didn't leave. Instead, she slid into the chair across from James, her eyes never leaving him. Her stare didn't bother him. Fork up, bite down. He barely even looked at her. For Natasha it was maddening. She was used to her looks as a weapon, sharper than any blade. Men faltered, stumbled over themselves, and gave her the higher ground willingly. But him? James ate with total disregard, as if her presence were a background noise. A faint line of tension appeared at her temple. Confidence fractured. Does he really think I'm not beautiful? The thought lodged itself despite her discipline. When Tony returned with a plate piled high, he caught the tableau, Natasha staring, with James chewing ignorantly, the silence charged in a way that made him grin. James, why are you even here? I thought you hated cocktail parties, Tony asked as he sat down. A mission, James said simply. If I didn't have one, I wouldn't bother. But the food here is also decent. Once I'm full, I'll go back to work. A mission? Both of you? Then why not show up together? Tony teased. James gave him a flat look. Forgot what you said to yourself already? Recognition flickered in Tony's eyes. He remembered. Don't let him see it, James had warned him once about masks and slips. Now Tony had slipped, and James had let him hang for a second before burying it under another bite of risotto. Tony wisely shut up and ate. Their table drew attention. Stark was a magnet for eyes, Romanoff doubled that effect, and James's indifference made the scene even stranger. Then came the booming voice. Mr. Stark, it's my honor to have you here tonight. Gilson Marbury approached like a man who wanted the whole hall to know it. He was a rotund man, his tuxedo stretched across his belly, cheeks flushed with the effort of walking across the room. His smile was wide, but his eyes were small, nearly hidden under folds of fat. Tony dabbed his mouth with a napkin, rose smoothly, and clasped the man's hand. Always glad to support charity, he said with the kind of effortless charm that could sell stock futures or missile contracts. Marbury's laughter boomed again. Yes, yes. Passion for charity. I recall you recently donated your art collection. Very generous indeed. James looked up briefly from his plate, then went back to eating. And this beautiful lady. Marbury's gaze lingered openly on Natasha. Mr. Stark, you always bring such stunning companions. I envy you. Oh, you would also if you could lose weight, Tony quipped without missing a beat. James nearly choked on his food. He swallowed quickly, refusing to let Stark see him laugh. Marbury didn't flinch. Why would I lose weight for a woman? When I can eat more instead. Beauty fades, but appetite endures. Natasha seized the moment, her voice silk over steel. Mr. Marbury, your reputation precedes you. The real estate empire, the scale of it, it's impressive. James caught the tactic instantly. A beautiful woman showing sudden interest was never free. Natasha was probing, watching for tells, fishing for openings. Analysis, probability high that Romanoff is leveraging appearance as tactical pressure. Countermeasure, minimal acknowledgement. James's lips quirked faintly. He knew he was handsome too, annoyingly so if the stares in the room were any metric. The difference was that he didn't rely on it. He didn't need to. Marbury puffed his chest proudly. And this must be Mr. James Gibson. Truly, I'm honored to meet you too. James wiped his mouth with a napkin, stood and shook the man's hand. The grip was soft yet clammy. First time at an event like this. To be honest, I'm not comfortable with it. But the food's good and that's all I need. Marbury's laugh was genuine this time. A man like my own heart. When we have the chance, we'll exchange info. I've eaten delicacies across the globe. We can enrich each other's appetite with all the food we have eaten. If the chance comes, I won't refuse. Marbury nodded, satisfied. He didn't linger for long. For all his appetite, he knew the dance of networking. Too much eagerness repelled more than it attracted. He moved on, voice booming again as he greeted another cluster of guests. James sat back down, plate half finished, mind already cataloging what mattered: Marbury's vanity, his appetite, his pride in excess. Weaknesses disguised as lifestyle. Tools waiting to be used. The hall hummed with chatter and music. Beyond the tall windows, waves broke against the rocks below, the steady pulse of the ocean carrying through the glass. The chandelier swayed faintly overhead as servers refilled glasses, laughter rising in bursts. James's focus remained razor-thin. Food was just a cover. Conversation was just a camouflage. And the mission, the real reason he tolerated these velvet chairs and hollow compliments, waited just beneath the surface. Chapter 120, Widow on a Mission. James sat back down with a plate refilled when Cortana's voice came in his mind. There is something unusual about the ring on Gilson Marbury's right hand. His fork paused briefly in his grip before he forced himself to keep eating, face unreadable. Give me details. He answered her silently. What's the problem? When you shook his hand, I attempted to probe his neural surface. The ring blocked me. Its material composition does not exist in any of my databases. Unknown alloy. Unknown origin. James chewed slowly, masking the flicker of interest behind his eyes. The alien weapon? Similar, yes. but without energy leakage and no detectable fluctuations. Conventional Earth sensors would find nothing. That makes it more dangerous. A potential weapon that remains invisible until activated. So S.H.I.E.L.D. wasn't exaggerating, James thought. They wouldn't send me and Romanoff to waste time on a trinket. He glanced across the hall. Marbury's bulk shifted as he laughed with another cluster of guests, the ring glinting faintly in the chandelier's fractured light. Its band was thick, almost swallowed by layers of fat, but 3 nodes on the surface caught his eye, raised points like studs, too deliberate to be a decoration. If it were locked in a vault, James reasoned, I'd already be halfway through to getting it. But on his hand? That complicates things. The man's palm had been fleshy, his fingers thick as sausages. Slipping it free without his notice would be near impossible. Any attempt might rip his skin. Not an option unless he wanted half the hall watching Marbury scream. There must be a mechanism to it, James thought. Some way he wears and removes it without effort. Negative. I scanned carefully during contact. No obvious trigger. No gesture. He shook hands normally. That does not mean it lacks function. It may require biofeedback, blood sampling, or a neural link. James's brow furrowed faintly. So he wears it live? Always armed? How does he attack with it, though? Unknown. Without a demonstration, I cannot confirm. But the material, absolutely alien. Not forged here. Not synthesized. Unless humanity discovered a new metallurgy overnight. James exhaled slowly through his nose. Which means unless we cut his finger off, that ring stays on him. Or remove a layer of flesh. Unlikely to succeed unnoticed. James's lips curved in a dry smirk. Not exactly subtle in this party. Maybe Romanoff will solve it for us. Acceptable strategy. Her primary directive is the vault. If she fails, our hypothesis strengthens. If she succeeds, then the ring is irrelevant. Efficiency suggests letting her test the ground first. Fine. Let the widow walk ahead. I'll follow after. James speared another slice of roast lamb, chewing without hurry. Across the room, Natasha Romanoff leaned into Marbury's side with professional grace. Her disguise tonight was a reporter, an easy mask, one she'd worn countless times. She peppered him with questions, eyes bright with interest and laughter landing at just the right moments. Marbury basked in it, his attention glued to her curves, barely noticing Stark seated nearby. Tony didn't care, though. He shoveled another forkful into his mouth, washing it down with wine. He side-eyed James's plate and raised a brow. Your appetite's gotten bigger than last time. James shrugged without looking up. Ever heard the saying? It's a blessing to be able to eat. Some blessings you just can't envy. He chewed steadily, eyes on the buffet station. Why are you even here with her? Tony shifted his gaze, saw Natasha leading Marbury toward another corner. She said S.H.I.E.L.D. had a mission, wanted my cooperation. Peppers in California while I had nothing better to do. James gave him a flat look. It was supposed to be a joint mission. I bring her in, then she looks for an opening. But since you messed up the plan, now she and I are out of step. Tony coughed awkwardly. Don't take it personally. You don't like her anyway. James stabbed a piece of chicken. Doesn't really matter. If she wants to move first, just let her. As long as the mission succeeds, I don't care who completes it. Tony chuckled, though uneasily. You're surprisingly relaxed about this. By the way, after the charity auction, there's supposed to be a game. A high-stakes betting. Are you in? James arched his brow. Marbury's idea? How big are the stakes? Depends. Multiple tables, different levels. No fixed limit. James thought for a beat, then nodded. Fine. I'll join. But I didn't bring that kind of money with me. You'll need to cover me. Tony laughed. You're broke? Why not let venture capital in your business? Maximize your returns. James leaned back, expression cool. I've got my own salary. More than enough to live well. Why hand over equity to strangers? Tony shook his head, amused, and took another sip. Across the room, Natasha worked Marbury like a seasoned actress. To most eyes, she was charming, curious, and enthralled by his tales of real estate empires and charity foundations. To James's eyes, she was reconnaissance wrapped in seduction. When the auction bell chimed, the hall atmosphere changed. Guests drifted toward the rows of velvet chairs facing a raised platform where priceless art and artifacts would be paraded one by one. Marbury took center stage beaming, while Natasha quietly peeled away. Only 2 men tracked her exit, James with his fork suspended briefly mid-air, and Tony sipping wine with nonchalance. Natasha was a shadow again. Her footsteps are near inaudible across the marble floor before vanishing into the villa's depths. She moved with intent, weaving through hallways until she reached the stairwell descending into the earth. At the bottom lay a massive steel vault door, flanked by 2 armed guards. Surveillance cameras watched from every angle. Romanoff studied it from the shadows, her mind already mapping routes. Too many eyes. Too much exposure. She retreated without a word, retracing steps until she found the surveillance hub on the first floor. 2 guards sat behind the bank of monitors, eyes half-lidded from boredom. She staggered towards the door, posture loose and lips parted in a slurred smile. One hand clutched her stomach, the other pressed against the frame as she stumbled inside. Huh? Why's the bathroom so weird? Her voice carried the perfect pitch of drunken confusion. The guards blinked, alarm in their eyes. Ma'am, this isn't. Before they could finish, she swayed, threatening to relieve herself on the spot. Panic overrode suspicion. Both men rushed forward to guide her out. Natasha's expression didn't change. Her hands flashed into her purse, drawing 2 slim taser sticks no longer than pens. She pressed them to the guards' necks in a blink. A snap of current cracked the air. Both men collapsed, spasms racking their bodies before they went limp. She adjusted her dress, rolled the guards under the console and sat calmly at the chair. Fingers flew across the keyboard, cycling through cameras, isolating feeds and creating a loop on the vault corridor. The monitors flickered once, then stabilized, frozen with the image of guards still standing, the door untouched. No one outside would notice. Back in the hall, James set his fork down and lifted his glass, masking the faint curve of a smile. Predictable and efficient, as expected from the Black Widow, easily clears the path. I'll follow when it's time. I'd recommend continuing monitoring. Probability of 67% that the artifact remains on Marbury himself and not in the vault. James drank slowly. Then let her waste time. If she proves you right, we know where to strike. The auctioneer's voice rose over the hall, rattling off bids in crisp cadence. Applause broke in waves. Champagne corks popped in the background. To the crowd, tonight was a spectacle. To James, it was just staging. The real prize sat on a fat man's finger, glinting under crystal light. And sooner or later, someone would bleed for it. Chapter 121, High-Stake Game. The Black Widow's electric shock suit was designed for close-quarters combat, every circuit in her gauntlets tuned for a disabling blow. Tonight, however, she hadn't worn it. The leather battle gear stayed in its case. Instead, she came armed with more subtle tools, slim shock batons disguised as accessories, compact and stealthy. The evening party demanded elegance, not body armor. In her line of work, a good disguise was the first weapon. Her standard combat uniform, a tight black leather with glowing wrist bracers sparking with stored voltage, would draw too much attention to herself. James had long been curious about the gauntlet's power source, wondering at the engineering works hidden inside such a small item. But that would have to wait. Tonight was about the alien ring. The auction above flowed quickly, wine and laughter softening the crowd. The atmosphere was refined, the kind of gathering where fortunes were casually exchanged for prestige. A charity banquet in name, but in truth a theater for the wealthy. The sums involved were small for people of this wealth, mere millions, pocket change for those who collected corporations the way others collected stamps. The real business would happen in the shadows. She was efficient, professional, and almost invisible when she chose to be. She went unnoticed as she walked through the corridors after dealing with the surveillance wing. The basement vault ahead. 2 guards lingered at the stairwell near the vault. A drunken act, a laugh that belonged to a socialite, and their attention strayed long enough. Her hand flickered, a taser baton cracked once, then twice. Both men slumped into silence. The same way she did the men in the surveillance wing. The vault door loomed before her. A steel titan of locks and codes. S.H.I.E.L.D had prepared her for this. Compact gears, micro-drills and electromagnetic breakers rendered the obstacle a nuisance rather than a wall. She bypassed the tumbler with cold precision. Inside glimmered the lattice of an infrared grid. A spider's web of light crisscrossing the chamber. To step inside unprepared meant alarms and death. She exhaled once, slow. High heels slipped off. Fingers found the zipper of her gown, pulling it down with deliberate calm until the fabric slipped around her feet. Beneath her gown, her frame was lean and honed from years of training, muscle hidden by velvet and silk until this moment. Then came a dance with death. She twisted, arched, slid low to the ground. A leg rose, bent, then curved under beams that would have burned others alive. Her waist bent like ribbon, her breath still steady. Crawling and rolling, her movements were both art and discipline. No audience and no applause, only silence and the hum of the security lasers. The far wall waited. A safe embedded in steel, its lock is biometric. She reached between her breasts, drawing out a wafer-thin membrane. A forgery of Gilson Marbury's fingerprint, painstakingly prepared by S.H.I.E.L.D. Labs. She pressed it to the scanner. A green light blinked. The vault gave way. Inside, documents, bonds, and glittering jewels. She searched quickly, yet she didn't find the supposed alien ring. Her jaw tightened. Anxiety cut through her calm. And then a sound. The vault door sliding closed. Quiet at first, then louder. She spun around to a sprint, but the vault door sealed before she could reach it. A final click echoed like a verdict. She was locked inside. Upstairs, the auction rolled on. James sat at the table, posture casual, though his eyes never strayed far from the crowd. He raised his paddle once, bidding on a diamond hair clip presented by a wealthy donor. The piece was simple, elegant, sparkling beneath the chandeliers. He thought of Mindy instantly. Why hasn't Natasha returned? Stark muttered beside him, tone low enough for only James to hear. She should have been back by now. James turned slightly. She hasn't reported in? Not a whisper. Stark's brow furrowed. And you really don't fancy her? Come on. Have you seriously never seen those bikini shots of hers? That figure. James cut him off with a flat glance. Not my type. His eyes, however, rose to the balcony where Gilson Marbury sat like a king at court. A guard leaned close to whisper in Marbury's ear. The fat man listened, frowned slightly, then waved the guard away without breaking stride in the auction. No alarm and no outward concern. James noted every gesture of his. He knows, James murmured. And yet he's not reacting. No sketchy glances, no hint of panic. Which means he's already made his move. Stark shifted in his chair. You think she's been found out? I think, James said, that we don't assume anything. But Marbury isn't stupid. He knows she's here. The bidding continued, lots passing hands with hollow applause. Wealth-changing owners meant little. James kept his face neutral, though his pulse was loud with unease. Natasha was many things, arrogant, cold, and unpredictable, but she never failed at infiltration. Not without interference. Marbury finally rose when the last gavel fell. Instead of departing, he extended a gracious invitation for all present to join him upstairs. The entertainment hall awaited. A casino dressed in velvet and brass. The hum of conversation gave way to the clatter of chips, the soft shuffle of cards. Staff in black suits and red ties moved gracefully between tables. James scanned the layout. Multiple exits, guarded but discreet. Casino floors were designed to trap attention while maintaining surveillance. Every corner was covered. Marbury approached with an oily smile. Mr. Stark. Mr. Gibson. Perhaps you'd be interested in a private game? Something substantial. Stark arched a brow, then glanced at James. The decision wasn't his to make. James leaned back slightly. Depends. How big is the stake of the game? If it's too small, why bother? Maybe we should just find a few women and enjoy the rest of the night. Marbury chuckled, unbothered. Oh, I assure you, gentlemen, it's worth your time. Tonight, the table is graced by players of significant stature. James gave a thin smile. Then lead the way. They followed him down a short corridor to a side chamber. A green felt table dominated the center, 6 chairs arranged neatly. 4 were already filled. James recognized them from photographs. Business titans, faces stamped across headlines and skyscrapers. Donald Trump, Robert Mercado, David Koch, and Michael Bloomberg. All eyes turned as Marbury gestured towards Stark and James. Gentlemen, allow me to introduce Mr. Tony Stark and Mr. James Gibson. No introductions needed beyond that. Tony gave them a casual nod. James's gaze lingered, reading, memorizing. The air in the room was heavy with money and power. 2 seats remained open. Strange, James said lightly, that our host hasn't joined. You bring us here, then sit back and watch us bleed each other dry? That doesn't suit a man of your reputation. Marbury hesitated. He had planned otherwise. The woman in the vault weighed on his mind. But James's tone was deliberate, provocative. To refuse would mean to offend. An offense tonight would cost more than money. Of course, Marbury said finally. I'll play as well. The 6 men settled in, Stark positioning himself behind James's chair like a shadow. The dealer entered, a young woman with porcelain skin and hands that looked crafted for the task. She took her place at the table, cards already in her grasp. Her smile was polite, her movements professional. The game began. Chapter 122, Texas Hold'em. Before the game began, chips had to be arranged. Though no one at the table would pull out cash, this wasn't like a casino on the Strip, and none of these men were professional gamblers. For them, poker was a pastime, a way to simulate risk in lives already insulated by obscene wealth. Boredom was the enemy of tycoons. Tonight's table promised excitement. The game of choice, Texas Hold'em. Straightforward, flexible, but ruthless in the right hands. 2 hidden cards dealt to each player, 5 community cards revealed one by one. Strategy came not just from the hand you held, but from the confidence you told with your bets. Bluff, pressure, patience, every move was an act wrapped around mathematics. How many chips should we start with? Gilson Marbury asked smoothly. As the host, it was his duty to set the tone. James spoke first. Give me 100 million. The words landed like a gunshot. Stark's head snapped toward him, eyes wide. 100 million wasn't just bold, it was reckless. For a man who has no cash to liquidate, it looked suicidal. But then Tony caught himself. Natasha was missing, trapped somewhere in this building. The mission was already compromised. James wasn't the type to throw numbers around without a plan. Stark kept his mouth shut, letting the younger man manipulate. The other tycoons exchanged glances. Their usual big-name tables might stretch into single-digit millions. But 100 million raised questions. Was Gibson fearless or unhinged? Men of their stature hadn't climbed to the top on luck alone. Foresight, risk, and nerve were their currencies. They studied him with the same scrutiny they gave billion-dollar mergers. Mr. Gibson is going to play so large? David Koch asked, tone skeptical but tinged with interest. James leaned slightly toward him. I heard Mr. Marbury say this would be a big-name game. 100 million isn't so large, is it? His face carried the look of someone naive enough not to recognize limits. Koch gave a short laugh. Bold. Very bold. No wonder you built league games into a powerhouse so quickly. I'll match you. He gestured for his own 100 million in chips. Others hesitated. Robert Mercado and Michael Bloomberg studied James, their experience telling them no man threw down that much without intent. Still, reputations mattered. They called for stacks of chips as well, each neat tower gleaming beneath the chandelier's light. James filed away their reactions. Every twitch, every pause. Information was the real currency here. He remembered a saying from his father, men at a poker table reveal more than they do at a boardroom. Fear never hides for long. The dealer, the young woman with precise hands and a porcelain smile, began her performance. Cards shuffled, flicking and snapping in hypnotic rhythm. James kept his gaze steady, but Cortana was already at work. Recording sequence. Card order logged. Deck shuffle analyzed. Her voice in his ear was calm. Every card, every placement, mapped and stored. James's memory alone was sharp, but with Cortana's overlay he was untouchable. The game opened with a modest proposal. Shall we say 1 million to start? James asked lightly. No one objected. 1 million was little more than the cost of an expensive lunch to these men. 6 players, 6 million on the table, and the first hand was dealt. James glanced at his hidden cards, 6 of clubs, Jack of hearts. He already knew how the hand would end. Cortana's projections had mapped the public cards before they left the dealer's fingers. Final outcome? A pair of jacks. Decent but not unbeatable. Robert Mercado and Michael Bloomberg had stronger hands. James decided to bleed quietly. Sometimes a loss was more valuable than a win. As the rounds played, the pot climbed and tension with it. James let his body language stay loose, casual, while Cortana guided the rhythm of his bets. A shrug, a half-smile, a call at the right time. In the end, he folded deliberately, letting Bloomberg take the win. Tens of millions shifted across the felt into Bloomberg's stack. Laughter followed, lightening the air. "Oh, this is faster than Wall Street," Bloomberg quipped, stacking his chips. "One hand and I make more than a day on the market." The table chuckled. Atmosphere reset. The scent of expensive cologne and fine whiskey clung to the air. The second round began. Cards dealt, community cards waiting. James knew the script. This time he had the edge, 3 queens. The kind of hand that let him play slow, bleed the others until they felt safe enough to commit. "It's a little small," James said, pushing chips into the center. "I'll add another $1,000,000. 2 million sat in the pot. The others followed without fuss. The public cards began to turn. 1, 2, 3, the board took shape. Faces tightened, glances traded. By the time the river card fell, the pot had swollen to 30 million. Only 3 players remained, James, Marbury, and Coke, with the rest having folded. James knew the endgame. Marbury held 2 pairs, Coke had a weaker triple. Both respectable, both enough to tempt. But James had a monster hand. He leaned back slightly, then pushed forward. 50 million. The room seemed to hold its breath. Marbury and Coke hesitated. Their eyes left their cards, moving instead to James. Searching his expression for any bluff. Looking for the twitch, the flicker of nerves. James gave Cortana the silent command. Executing minor physiological adjustment acts. A sheen of sweat appeared at his temple, subtle but visible. His breathing hitched ever so slightly. To men trained in boardroom warfare, it looked like nervousness. Marbury's mouth curved into a smirk. Coke gave a knowing chuckle. Both pushed their stacks forward, 50 million each. Chips clattered against chips, towers collapsing into a mountain of wealth in the center. James smiled faintly. "Confident now, are we?" Coke answered with the patronizing tone of an elder schooling a youth. "Heh. You've been in business barely a year, Mr. Gibson. It's admirable, really. But don't mistake bravado for strength. 100 million is a great deal for a young company still burning cash." James kept his eyes flat, his voice steady. "Maybe. Or maybe this is just another investment." Marbury's smile widened. "If Mr. Gibson dares to play, so do we. Now let's see the cards." James gestured toward them. "By all means. Show me how strong you think you are." Chapter 123, The Act of Poker. David Coke revealed his cards first, sliding them across the felt with the calmness of a man who had done this game 1,000 times. The dealer's white hands fanned them out, pairing them with the community cards in the center of the table, 5 shared cards every player could use to build their best hand. 2 pairs, respectable but far from the top. "I'm sorry, Mr. Coke. I have 3 of a kind." Gilson Marbury laid down his hand with a smile. The dealer repeated the process, stacking his 3 eights into order, a stronger combination, 3 of the same rank. "Not bad," Coke said easily. He wasn't the type to sulk over tens of millions. "Mr. Marbury takes this one." He leaned back, unfazed, though his eyes narrowed with the instinctive competitiveness of a man used to winning. His gaze slid toward James. "Now let's see what you're holding." James gave a soft shrug, his expression indifferent. "Apologies, gentlemen. 3 of a kind too, only mine wear crowns." He turned his cards, the 2 queens flashing under the chandelier light. The dealer swept them in with the public cards, confirming the combination, 3 queens, enough to beat Marbury's 8s. The table stiffened for a moment, then relaxed into murmurs. "Impressive," Donald Trump quipped, voice carrying more curiosity than praise. "Queens at the bottom of your stack? That's not bad luck at all." Coke gave a small scoff. "Beginner's fortune. Happens often. Pair at the start can carry a hand. Nothing unusual." The disdain was deliberate. James caught it but let it pass with a faint smile. His chips were being stacked neatly by the servants, more than 100 million slid into his control. That was satisfaction enough. Across the table, Marbury's expression betrayed a flash of regret. He'd been close, and close meant nothing at this level. James noted it, the smallest twitch of frustration in a man who prided himself on composure. That was the real win. Leaning slightly, James murmured to Stark at his shoulder. "He's stretched thin. Am I right?" Tony tilted his head, considering. "Think so. He's developing a new plot in Manhattan. An expensive one. Prime plot of land, but he's bleeding cash to cover it." James nodded once. "Useful leverage." He ordered a glass of juice from a passing servant, ignoring the amused look Stark gave him. The table was drowning in whiskey and cigars, but James preferred having a clear head. The third hand was dealt. James read his cards immediately, Cortana's overlay confirming what he already suspected. This round wasn't his. He tossed away $1 million casually, folding without a hint of concern. Marbury lost again, $5 million gone chasing nothing, and for the first time that evening the host's mask cracked. His jaw clenched, his posture shifted just enough to show irritation. James didn't comment. The cracks would widen on their own. The night wore on, hand after hand. James picked his battles, winning 3 consecutive rounds with Cortana's help. Every chip he claimed added pressure on the table. Coke and Marbury bled the heaviest, their stacks shrinking until they finally collapsed. Both were cleaned out, their seats bare of any chips. James's pile, by contrast, towered over the table. More than 300 million worth of chips gleamed under the light. He leaned back, finally letting a trace of satisfaction into his voice. The gentleman earlier was right. This is faster than running an industry. Much faster. His eyes drifted to the empty spots in front of Coke and Marbury. Do either of you plan to buy back in? We've only played 6 hands. The night is still young. Coke's lips pressed thin. His pride was pricked, but his wealth insulated him. 100 million was barely a scratch to a man worth tens of billions. Losing it was irritating but not ruinous. Still, James's arrogance grated them. Another 100 million, Coke announced. The servant looked uncertain. Mr. Coke, forgive me, but we've only prepared 600 million in chips tonight. That's the limit. What remains are only small denominations. James interjected smoothly, his tone casual but cutting. You can write a check. I'll cover it with my stack. In the end, the chips are just symbols. One way or another, the money changes hands. Coke's eyes flickered. Aren't you afraid I'll win it back? James spread his hands. Not at all. If you do, I'll hand the check back. No difference. His voice carried a disarming calm, the kind that irritated men who thrived on control. Coke snarled, then scribbled the check with a flourish. The servant exchanged it for 100 million in chips drawn directly from James's mountain. Marbury hesitated. His pride as host was on the line. As the host, he said at last, forcing a smile, I can't step away. 100 million more. He wrote his own check, sliding it across. The dealer redistributed, their towers of chips rebuilt. The game continued. James played carefully. Cortana tracked every shuffle, every deal. He couldn't manipulate the deck, luck still ruled, but he didn't need constant wins. Losing occasionally was more normal. He allowed chips to trickle back across the table, enough to make it look natural, enough to keep suspicion from forming. Yet the flow always bent in his direction. An hour later, the outcome was undeniable. Every man at the table was bleeding dry. Chips scattered in small stacks, less than 10 million each. Only James's pile remained vast, more than 2/3 of the table's wealth sitting before him. Robert Mercado broke the silence. Gentlemen, that's enough. Let's make this interesting. One last round. All in. Winner takes all. What do you say, Mr. Gibson? I suspect you'll walk away the victor anyway. He spoke lightly, but his eyes were sharp. A media king worth billions, his empire built on perception. He saw through James's calm more than the others. James leaned forward, expression unreadable. I have no objection. The rest agreed. The dealer prepared the last hand. Cards dealt, community cards lined face down. James scanned the order as always. His brow furrowed. This time the winning hand wasn't his. It belonged to Gilson Marbury. His fingers drummed on the table. If Marbury walked out with a win here, he'd still limp away from the night wounded but alive. James's plan to corner him financially would collapse. The mission's window might close. He bent toward Stark, voice low. How bad is he in debt? Tony frowned. You're planning something? James's reply was quiet steel. If this doesn't land, force will be the only option. And I don't like our odds against that ring. Stark exhaled. At least $1 billion, maybe more. High-end apartments at Central Parkside. Bought the land too high. He needs cash fast. If he doesn't find it, he'll be in trouble. James nodded once. The math lined up. Loans meant interest, partners meant diluted profit. Neither were palatable to a man like Marbury. He would fight tooth and nail for liquidity. That desperation could be his undoing. But this hand, this last round, would decide whether subtlety prevailed or whether steel and blood would follow. Chapter 124, Winner Takes All. James weighed the options, then reached inward. Cortana, he murmured, low enough so no one else would hear. How do I beat him? The odds are poor. A clean win isn't possible. Your best chance is to control the deal. When you cut the deck, shift it just enough to change the order of the cards. Make Marbury think he's been dealt something strong enough to bet everything. You'll have the better hand waiting. He'll chase the win and you'll spring the trap. Her advice dripped risk from every word, but so did opportunity. No one at the table had bothered to cut the deck all night. They were businessmen, not gamblers. They treated the game as performance, not war. But James had lived long enough to know war often hid behind performance. The dealer shuffled the cards. Gentlemen, would anyone care to cut? Silence and shrugs. Cards meant nothing to men this rich until they did. James leaned forward, expression easy. Since this is the last hand, I'll try my luck. Let me cut. The room barely reacted. No one cared. If he lost, he lost. If he won, it was still just numbers to them. But to Marbury, short on cash and cornered by his own ambitions, it was like oxygen running dry. The dealer split the deck where James's hand touched. The dealings moved on. Cards fell to each player, two apiece. Chips clinked as blinds hit the table. Then the declaration came. Final round, Trump said, pushing his stack forward. All in. The others echoed, pushing in their chips. It was a theater now, the wealthy mimicking recklessness. James looked at his cards, the public spread waiting to turn. As the first 3 community cards landed, he raised his voice. Gentlemen, mind if I raise the stakes a little further? Brows lifted around the table. Robert Mercado narrowed his eyes, then set his cards down. Looks like you've drawn strong. I'll fold here. He wasn't reckless, his empire was built on reading people. 2 others followed, bowing out. The table thinned until only David Koch and Gilson Marbury remained. Koch smirked. He'd been circling James all night, testing him. His hand was good, 3 of a kind, a high card. Since you're pushing for more, I'll stay in. Let's see how far this goes. Marbury hesitated. His stack was already crippled. If he folded, 200 million would evaporate. If he stayed, he could claw his way back, or fall further into the pit. His hand flexed, fingers brushing the band of metal on his finger. James's gaze drifted. The ring. Always the ring. Why wear it tonight if it was destined for an auction? Why risk exposure? Unless he had already grown attached, or frightened enough to need it. Inside Marbury's mind, conflict raged. He'd been drowning in debts from his Central Park development. If this gamble hit, the profit would be staggering. If not, he would need loans, partners, concessions. For a man obsessed with independence, it was unthinkable. The ring offered reassurance. It was alien, untraceable, and his private edge. How could he part with it? I'll stay, Marbury said at last. His voice carried both pride and hunger. But Mr. Gibson, how much are you proposing to raise? James tapped the mountain of chips before him. 500 million. Round number. Shall we? The air froze. Even for billionaires, 500 million in cash stung. Assets were one thing, liquid wealth another. A bet this size turned games into warfare. Koch's brows rose. He almost laughed. You young men really do play with fire. Fine. 500 million. He scribbled the check and pushed it forward. All eyes turned to Marbury. His cheeks glistened faintly, his jaw clenched. He knew what this meant. If he made the call and lost, the fallout could cripple him. But to fold was humiliation, here in front of peers who measured dominance in risk. Fine, he said, voice strained. He signed the check with deliberate strokes. 500 million gone into the pile. The room buzzed with disbelief. The final cards landed. Koch revealed first, 3 of a kind, a solid hand but not unbeatable. Marbury leaned back, relief spreading across his face. Apologies, gentlemen. But I hold a flush. He spread his cards with pride, 5 hearts, all the same suit, gleaming red under the light. Looks like fortune smiles on me after all. Mr. Gibson, I don't suppose you can beat that. James's lips tugged upward. Calm and confident. Not necessarily. He revealed his own. 2 queens which, combined with the shared cards on the table, formed a straight flush, 5 cards in perfect sequence, all of the same suit. Not just matching colors, but a flawless run. The kind of hand most players never see in a lifetime. The dealer confirmed it softly, almost reverently. Winner, Mr. Gibson. For a moment, silence. Then Marbury's face collapsed, fat cheeks quivering, eyes hollow. 700 million evaporated in an instant. Coke exhaled with a dry laugh, pulling out another check. Well, well. Thought you were bluffing. Turns out you've got steel, kid. The sweat earlier was convincing. Las Vegas would eat you alive or make you king. When you go, hook me up. James only smiled faintly. He knew better than to walk into a den built for sharks like Coke. The other 3 men, Trump, Mercado, Bloomberg, wrote checks for their remaining stakes, offered perfunctory nods, and departed. They'd seen enough. James gathered the pile, the weight of solvency finally pressing into his hands. He had been poor for weeks, every dollar sunk into projects and fronts. Now, with one night's work, the burden eased. Marbury stayed behind. His eyes rolled, calculating even in defeat. Mr. Gibson is lucky. 1 evening and you've earned more than most men see in a lifetime. James laughed, relaxed and careless. Haha. I should be thanking you, Mr. Marbury. Without hosts like you, how would I ever earn a living? To be honest, if Tony hadn't come tonight, I wouldn't have dared. I had no capital. I'm broke. The fat on Marbury's jaw trembled. So that was it. Gibson had risked nothing, yet leveraged everything. The kind of arrogance that enraged older men because it worked. Mr. Gibson is quite bold, he said stiffly. To raise so high without capital. James leaned forward, voice edged. What's there to fear? In the end, the money came from you. If I lost, it still stayed in your pocket. Why mourn it? Chapter 125, The Widow's Vault Situation. Gilson Marbury stopped talking to James and turned toward Tony Stark. His half-smile didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Stark, where's your date? That stunning reporter who came with you. Tony leaned back, glass in hand, the picture of careless charm. How would I know? I meet more beautiful reporters in a year than I can count. She left, I assume. Why should I care where she goes? Gilson's smile sharpened. Really? Because this particular reporter just turned up in my vault. Care to explain that? Tony blinked once as if the words barely registered, then gave a dry chuckle. My vault? Your vault? If she broke in, you should call the police. A woman like that deserves a lesson. His grin turned crooked. I hadn't even made a move on her and she ran off. Typical. James stayed quiet, watching Gilson's eyes flick between him and Tony. He could tell Gilson wasn't really angry about the vault, that was just the excuse. The man's real focus was on the check still tucked in James's right hand. Gilson had lost a fortune at the poker table tonight, money he didn't have, and now he wanted it back. So that's what this is, James thought. He's building an excuse to make a move. Subtly, he shifted his stance, right foot forward, ready to strike if needed. Gilson's tone hardened beneath his polite veneer. Mr. Stark, you brought a thief into my home. I need to know how to explain this to the authorities, or perhaps you have a better solution. In truth, he wasn't thinking about police reports. Gilson Marbury was desperate, drowning in debt, and the check in James's hand was his only lifeline. If he could twist this situation, use the reporter as leverage, maybe he could claw something back. He couldn't afford to make an enemy of Tony Stark, but bluffing was second nature to a man who'd just lost everything. Tony's grin widened, all sharp teeth and arrogance. Heh. The women around me change by the day, Marbury. What they do is their business, not mine. If they're gorgeous, that's enough. Whether they're thieves or angels, who cares? Maybe you don't know much about that sort of thing. The insult hung in the air like the spark before a fire. Gilson didn't take the bait. He laughed instead, a humorless, brittle sound. In that case, gentlemen, why don't I show you both a little entertainment? You'll find it illuminating. James stepped in, his tone cool. Fine by me. But if this show isn't worth our time, we're leaving. Oh, I promise you, Gilson said with a wicked grin, you'll be satisfied. He turned and led them out of the room, down the marble hallway to the surveillance suite on the first floor. The room buzzed with the low hum of monitors. Gilson gestured toward one of the screens. There she is. Your reporter. James followed his gaze and froze. On the grainy feed, Natasha Romanoff sat slumped against the vault wall, pale and motionless. The sealed vault had no ventilation. Their card game had lasted nearly 2 hours. Tony's smirk vanished. She's been in there this whole time? For once, the billionaire playboy's voice held no trace of amusement, only shock. That's the show? James asked Gilson Marbury. That's right. It's relatively easy to get into my vault, but it's difficult to get out. The security system here is very interesting. Most people don't know what's going on inside. Oh? Care to tell me all about it? I want to make a vault for my newfound money. James asked with interest. Gilson Marbury pointed at the monitor, his tone full of pride. The first vault door opens with a password, nothing fancy by today's standards. Same with the small safe inside. But here's where it gets interesting. He smirked, tapping the screen where Natasha sat trapped inside. Once you're in, you have to disable the infrared alarm before opening that inner safe. If you don't, the outer door seals itself automatically. From the inside, there's no way to reopen it. Creative, isn't it? I had it custom built, a death trap for anyone foolish enough to sneak in. James nodded slowly, pretending to admire it. Clever. You've got quite the imagination, Mr. Marbury. Most thieves wouldn't think to turn off an alarm after they're already inside. Gilson chuckled darkly. Now then, gentlemen, anything else to say? If not, why don't we sit back and enjoy the show? Such a shame, she really is a beautiful thief. James's voice turned cold. Since you admit she's beautiful, why not invite her out? I'm sure she'd be very cooperative right now. He was baiting Gilson, trying to get him to open the vault before it was too late. But Gilson only grinned, shaking his head. Do you take me for a fool? Who knows who she really is or what she's capable of? No, it's safer this way. Maybe I'll keep her as a souvenir. A human specimen, perhaps. James stared at him, disgust flickering in his eyes. This guy's really that cruel, he thought. No wonder he's still dealing weapons underground. He glanced at the screen again. Natasha was slumped against the wall, breathing shallowly. Time was running out. All right, James said evenly, hiding his urgency. I like her. What do you want in exchange, Mr. Marbury? Gilson's face brightened. That's easy. Give me the check you won tonight and she's free. Fair trade, don't you think? James burst into laughter. You must be joking. You'd trade one woman for a check worth $1.7 billion? For that kind of money, I could go to Hollywood and buy myself a dozen just like her. Gilson's smile faltered. He was gambling, hoping one of them actually cared about Natasha. So you don't care then? James shrugged. Not exactly. But $1.7 billion is ridiculous. Let's talk business instead. Your real estate project's short on funds, right? I'll invest $1.5 billion into it. Sound better? Gilson snorted. If I wanted investors, I'd have found them already. I don't need your charity. Don't worry, James said, his tone turning cold. I haven't finished yet. In addition to the money, I'm taking a stake in your life. The sudden shift in his voice made Gilson Marbury flinch. He stumbled back a step, his left hand instinctively reaching toward his right, but James was faster. They were still in the surveillance room. A few of Gilson's bodyguards stood nearby, but none of them moved. No one expected a billionaire to attack someone himself. In an instant, James closed the distance between them. He seized Gilson's wrist and twisted sharply. Ah! The fat man let out a cry of pain as his arm was forced behind his back. His knees buckled and he dropped to the floor, groaning as James pulled his right arm higher, locking him in place. Phew! Gilson panted through gritted teeth. What do you think you're doing? If anything happens to me, none of you will leave this villa alive. James smiled thinly. Heh. Tony's Iron Man, remember? And I've got my own armor. We can blast our way out of here anytime we like. When it's over, we'll just say you tried to rob us for the check. After all, everyone knows you've been short on money lately. As Gilson wheezed and struggled, James's eyes shifted to the ring on the man's finger, the very item Natasha had been searching for. He studied it carefully, but at first glance it looked completely ordinary. Still, he had a feeling it wasn't. Chapter 126, Widow's Retrieval, Success. James grabbed Gilson Marbury's right arm and restrained him with one hand so that the bodyguards would be cautious. Gilson Marbury's fat body knelt on the ground because of the pain in his right arm. What do you want? Gilson Marbury asked helplessly. Let the woman out and then we'll talk. Don't think about playing any tricks. It's easy to just kill you. James took out his pistol and pointed it at his fat head. Ordinary people like him easily break when a gun is pointed and pressed to their heads. Gilson Marbury regretted his greed and had no choice but to instruct the bodyguards to take the girl out. James had a clear view through the surveillance room. There was no ventilation system in the vault. Agent Natasha Romanoff had begun to have some difficulty breathing. Her hair was wet with sweat, and she did not put on her high heels and evening gown again. She leaned against the wall and breathed with difficulty. The door was opened and fresh air rushed in. The airflow began to circulate. Natasha Romanoff gasped a few times, but the bodyguards who entered were not in the mood to admire her body. 2 of them came forward and picked her up and took her out. In the monitoring room, James looked at Natasha Romanoff with a teasing expression. She was in a very sorry state. Moreover, James was glad that he had let her take the lead. Otherwise, it would not be fun for him to be locked up as well. He might even expose his subspace storage. About your money problems, Mr. Marbury? Have you thought about it? Do you want me to invest? James did not talk about the ring first, but asked about the investment. Sure, but you can only take 30% for $1.5 billion. Oh? I'll get someone to check how much your total investment is. As for the share of investment, I know you want to develop it independently, but it will take a long time to recover the cost of the development of this kind of complex. In the meantime, if your capital chain has problems, I promise to help you instead of hitting you when you're down. I think you understand that I'm at least more sincere than any bank. Oh, okay, can you let go of me now? Not yet, there is another problem. How do you take off this ring? Why are you asking that and why do you know about my ring? Gilson Marbury asked. You don't have to worry about that. I'm just doing someone a favor and I'm also very afraid of your ring. Tony and I didn't intend to interfere in this matter, but we heard that your ring is very magical and it made us feel a little scared. This is a dangerous weapon for assassination, and it's too dangerous for anyone. What do you think? I'm just using it to defend myself. But why did I hear that you want to sell it? Also, if some people know that you have such a weapon, then you can't keep it. If you hand it over now, you can save me a lot of trouble. Don't think that others don't know that you secretly sell firearms. They just can't be bothered with you. If things get really serious, you will be in jail or worse, dead. All right, you can take it. As soon as Gilson Marbury finished speaking, the ring suddenly opened. The ring, which had 3 points on it, suddenly unfolded and the diameter of the band instantly became larger. James took it off his finger and let go of him. That's interesting. How did you remove it? James asked curiously. Gilson Marbury hurried back to a bodyguard. After wearing it, it will prick you. Then the ring will close. As long as you want to take it off, it will automatically loosen and be easy to remove. Oh? So it seems to be connected to the nerves? I really didn't expect it, but how do you even use it? You need to consciously rub the surface of the ring 3 times. Then a small hole will open. Then you just aim at a target. It will fire with a mental command. Gilson Marbury now wanted to kill the 3 of them, but he gave up after thinking about it because the other party did not seem to care about him. James held the ring in one hand and the gun in the other and did not even look at him. Gilson Marbury had paid the price for his greed, and now he decided to be careful, so he didn't let the bodyguards do anything at all. He just stood there and watched. James and Tony Stark, on the other hand, were very curious about the ring. A simple artifact that merely uses a mental command and gesture to work? James looked up at Gilson Marbury and gave him a strange smile, which startled him. Satisfied, James said, "You're smarter than I thought. You didn't let the bodyguards make a move. I was so looking forward to it. Since I agreed to cooperate, I naturally have to be sincere." Gilson Marbury felt lucky for his decision. There must be something that he didn't know. I originally wanted to snatch this ring forcefully, but I heard that the ring is very powerful, so I was a little afraid. From the moment I got the ring, you became nothing in my eyes. As for whether you believe it or not, that's your business. I appreciate that you can remain rational now. The investment plan remains unchanged. My lawyers will contact you tomorrow. After the inspection is completed, I will transfer the money and hope to see you work hard. In addition, the arms business should stop. Your every move is being watched. I see. I put all my money into this project. I hope Mr. Gibson can help if something goes wrong. Of course, I said that I wouldn't hit you when you're down. I mean what I say. You can rest assured that if this cooperation is good, we can continue to work together. I think my company should be listed after this project. I have plenty of funds. You won't lose out by working with me. Only then did Gilson Marbury realize that once this company went public, the value of the shares sold would be massive. It would be much higher than the bet made with the few people who played cards with him today. I'm looking forward to it. Then we will take our leave. With that, James walked out first, and Natasha Romanoff was finally fully awake at this time, but she was still weak and could barely walk. The three of them were driven out of the villa and left in the car. Agent Natasha Romanoff, the famous Black Widow, got into James's car. She was wearing only her black lace underwear. Her figure was curvy and her flat stomach was visible, but James didn't think much of it. This older beauty, modified and trained for full seduction by the Red Room, was really not his type. As she said herself, she was also a monster. Tony Stark went straight back to Stark Tower. The two of them agreed to meet there tomorrow and study the ring together. They were both curious about this kind of thing and wanted to study it carefully, whether it was the neural connections or the materials of the ring itself. James did not think of handing it over just yet. He would study it first. This material could withstand the heat of laser weapons. It was important for him and Tony Stark. Their Umbra Sentinel needed an upgrade with this type of material. Chapter 127, Natasha X Family. The Black Widow felt a flicker of shame she wasn't used to. She'd never had a good impression of James, yet there was no denying the truth, he had saved her tonight. She had expected to slip into Marbury's vault as easily as she always had, only to learn that she got outplayed and trapped. The memory of the door closing on her still burned in her mind. It made her jaw tighten in quiet humiliation. She slid into the passenger seat beside him, her voice low. "Thank you for saving me." James didn't give her much of a glance, but offered her a shirt he had for emergency. "It doesn't matter. We took the mission together. I'm responsible for what happens to you." It was true. He'd sent her in first. If anyone bore blame for the near disaster, it was him. For all her arrogance, she was still a teammate. His tone stayed even, but he felt the weight of it. She hesitated, glancing at her herself. "Can I stay at your place tonight? I left everything back there." "Sure," he said simply. "We'll grab you some stuff in the morning." The car hummed through the quiet city. It was late, too late for eyes or gossip. They parked in the underground level, the air cool and still, the elevator rising up to the penthouse. Natasha rubbed her hands over her body out of habit more than modesty. It wasn't cold, it was summer, but vulnerability was foreign to her, and she was trying to cover it up. On the top floor, James guided her to the auxiliary room. Steel and precision greeted them, the storage room for his weapons and the Umbra Sentinel suits. The first prototype of Umbra Sentinel stood silent in the corner like a statue of midnight metal. "There's a room here you can use," he said, motioning. "The others are under security lockdown, so don't wander around. Take a shower first, I'll find you something to wear." He stepped inside briefly. The space was spare, in a utilitarian style. The only personal touches were Hannah's, folded towels and neatly arranged toiletries. He grabbed the largest towel and tossed it to her before leaving for his own room next door. The apartment was dark. Everyone was asleep, everyone except Annie, who came padding softly to the door. "Hey there, sweet Annie," James murmured, crouching to scoop her up. The kitten's warmth pressed against his chest. "You're getting big again. I might have to put you on a diet." He pressed his face onto her and gave her little kisses until she protested and set her down gently, watching her tail flick as she trotted away. In his bedroom, he grabbed a clean black shirt from his closet and returned to Natasha's door, knocking and waiting until she opened a crack to the door and saw him outside. "Here," he said, handing it for her to reach. "Wear this for now. I'll get you proper clothes in the morning. Just write me a note of your size." Natasha took the shirt, her gaze studying him. "Do you really think I'm not beautiful?" It was the kind of question meant to unsettle, to test. Anyone else might have stumbled over it. James didn't blink. "Beauty's subjective. Tony thinks you're gorgeous. Isn't that enough?" She smirked faintly. "You have good chemistry with Maria Hill. Is she more your type?" He shot her a look of questioning. "So much for S.H.I.E.L.D. confidentiality. You spies really can't help yourselves." Observation: subject is attempting to reassert dominance through flirtation. James exhaled quietly. "You should get some sleep. She tilted her head, eyes glinting. Or, she said with a teasing smile, you could join me. I don't mind sharing a shower. He rolled his eyes, already turning away. Not tonight, Romanoff. The bathroom door clicked behind her, sounds of water now splattering, and he muttered under his breath, out of sight, out of mind. Morning came early. James was up at dawn, the scent of coffee and metal mixing in the air. Mindy was already awake, tying her hair in a ponytail and lacing up her sneakers. She never slept in. Training was a ritual to her. She appeared in his doorway, cheerful as ever. Brother, when did you get back last night? Late, James said, stretching. Come on, let's start our day. Warm up first. In the converted living room, 3 treadmills roared to life. James, Mindy, and Carlos fell into rhythm, with a cat wheel just beside them where Annie joins in on their routine. The steady pounding of their steps echoing off the glass walls. The sound woke the special guest. The bedroom door opened. Natasha, bleary-eyed, hair fuzzy, stepped into the hall wearing nothing but his shirt. Carlos froze mid-stride. Mindy gawked, lost balance, and tumbled backward off the treadmill, and Annie jumped off to get to Mindy's side. Without missing a beat, James said dryly, "This is Agent Natasha Romanoff. She was on assignment with me last night and stayed here after. Mindy, get up and keep running." Mindy thanks Annie for checking up on her and scrambled up, cheeks red, and resumed her pace, though her eyes kept darting back. The Black Widow, realizing what she'd interrupted, slipped quickly into the bathroom to wash her face. When she emerged again, the shirt hung loosely over her hips, barely reaching mid-thigh. She looked half a warrior and half a scandal waiting to spread. "When are you going shopping?" she asked, leaning against his treadmill. "You'll need to buy me underwear too." The words dripped with mischief. "After breakfast," James replied flatly. "Don't forget to write the note or I'll just buy you baggy ones." She smiled faintly, a hand on her hip posing as if to show off. "Can't you tell just by looking?" Mindy's foot slipped again, she squealed and went sprawling a second time. Annie came over and put a paw on her head. James sighed, hitting the emergency stop. "Mindy, focus. You can't get distracted like that. And Agent Romanoff," his tone sharpened, "try to behave like an adult. She's 12. Natasha's smirk faltered. "Oh." She tugged at the hem of the shirt. "Right. Sorry." The moment passed in awkward silence. "Breakfast is next door," James said finally. "Hannah doesn't know you're here yet. Go tell her and help out." "Got it," she murmured, padding toward the kitchen. As soon as she left, Mindy clambered back on her treadmill. "Brother, is she your girlfriend?" "No," James said, resuming his pace. "Just a colleague. My mission went sideways, she lost her stuff. And Mindy," he glanced over, "a lady should be dignified. Don't copy her." "Yes, sir," she said, though curiosity still danced in her eyes. "But she's really pretty." "Not as pretty as our Mindy. Give it a few years, you'll outshine her easily." Mindy grinned, pushing harder on the treadmill. After the run came the sandbags, one for each. Mindy worked her smaller one, learning control over strength, while James sparred lightly with her under Carlos's watchful eye. Sweat, rhythm, and discipline. The language of their morning routines. By the time they finished and headed to wash up, the smell of breakfast filled the air. In the dining room, Hannah glanced between James and Natasha, her eyes flicking from the oversized shirt to his composed expression. James could almost hear Cortana's dry tone in his head. Advisory, social misunderstanding imminent. He sighed inwardly. "Here we go again," he muttered, reaching for the coffee. Chapter 128, Mission, Shopping for Underwear. James finished his breakfast and hurriedly left with the note written by Natasha. The gazes of his family were too much for him to bear, so he had no choice but to leave as fast as he could and go clothes shopping. He did not read what was written on the note and drove to a large shopping mall nearby. After parking the car, James took the elevator upstairs and went to the floor filled with ladies' clothing outlets. It was said that women's money was the easiest to earn, and every mall had a floor dedicated to them. Only then did he look at the note. The size of her underwear. He frowned. It was a big size. He'd expected that, but the note also listed a specific brand. Great. He shook his head, exhaling slowly through his nose, and began his humiliating search. Observation, elevated heart rate, you seem to be getting nervous. "Yeah," he muttered. "Because I'm a grown man hunting lingerie in public, Cortana." Statistically uncommon male behavior pattern. 94% of male shoppers outsource this task. Gotcha. Next time I'll recruit Stark's assistant for field support. A man clutching a pink note on a floor filled with women's outlet stores. He might as well have been holding a live grenade. Every few steps and another curious glance. Every mirror he passed reflected a version of himself trying to look casual and failing miserably. He was grateful Mindy hadn't insisted on tagging along. The last thing he needed was his kid sister walking into this side of himself and assuming he'd gone insane. Finally, he spotted the store. The brand was high-end, subtle lettering in gold across the display window. Inside, there were only a handful of early shoppers, 2 women comparing laces against their skin and another testing the elasticity of a strap. All 3 paused when James entered. He caught it immediately, the brief silence, the polite attempt not to stare. He was used to attention, but not this kind. The sales assistants, all women, perked up. Handsome, alone, well-dressed, to them he was either a romance or a scandal waiting to happen. "Please help me get a set of underwear in this size," James said, handing over the note like it was evidence from a crime scene. "Of course, sir." The assistant's smile brightened. There aren't many men willing to buy intimate underwear for their girlfriends these days. "That's very sweet." He bit back a sigh. What was he supposed to say? "My colleague lost everything on a mission. This is part of damage control?" "If you could please just get me a set," he said instead, keeping his tone neutral. "Understood. What style would you like? This season's design is very captivating." She held up a set that looked more like it belonged in a weapons lab than a drawer, 2 thin straps of silk and something that could hardly be called giving coverage. The corners of James's mouth twitched. If he bought that, Natasha would kill him, and Hannah would murder him after. "Something more conservative," he said tightly. The assistant blinked, surprised. "Conservative, right?" She gave him a look halfway between pity and curiosity before disappearing behind a rack. James rubbed his temple. He could almost hear Stark's laughter echoing in his head. "Next time I'm delegating this entire mission to him," he muttered. "He probably has an entire department for lingerie logistics." Cortana just had to quip in at that moment. Recommendation acknowledged. Suggest hiring a human resources assistant for such a task. "Yeah. First, let me survive this one." He thought briefly about how Tony handled women, fast, detached, and efficient. Stark never had to deal with this nonsense. Every model, every reporter, handled by Pepper Potts before breakfast. Tony lived like a tycoon. James, meanwhile, was out here buying underwear like a confused buffoon. The assistant returned with a modest set, practical fabric with neutral color. He nodded in relief, handed over his card, and waited impatiently as she wrapped it. The glossy bag, however, carried a very distinct brand logo. He froze. There was no way he could walk around holding that. Not for long. He left the store quickly, trying not to meet anyone's eyes. A man clutching a lingerie bag on a women's floor was a public anomaly. As he passed another boutique, he noticed a group of shoppers glance at him, whispering. His nerves cracking. "Perfect," he muttered. "Exactly the kind of gossip I didn't want." He still needed to buy a coat. Inside the next shop, a different clerk spotted the bag immediately. "Sir, that's a wonderful brand. Are you looking for something to match? Maybe something for—" "Stop," James interrupted, voice edged. "Just grab any coat that fits the size on this note. Neutral color. No exaggerated or risque design." Her smile faltered. "Right away, sir." While she scurried off, James sighed. The absurdity of it all, the secret agent buying clothes for a woman who could kill him with a paperclip. Maybe the real mission was surviving this embarrassment. The coat arrived. He paid without haggling and shoved the new bag over the first one, concealing the logo. A slight improvement. Then came the final step, shoes. He reached the footwear section, hoping, praying, for a transaction free of commentary. "Sir," the clerk began politely, "it's summer, and if your girlfriend has delicate feet, we recommend our latest open-toe." James cut him off, voice flat and serious. "Pick any pair in this size. A normal one. Then ring me up." The clerk blinked at the tone, the kind that made soldiers stand straighter, and scrambled to comply. Within seconds, the transaction was done. As James exited, he exhaled slowly. His pulse finally eased. "Stress levels are decreasing. Congrats on your successful shopping," Cortana noted. "Never again," he muttered. If this happens twice, I'm officially applying for Stark-level staff privileges. Cortana gave a text. Assessment, overreaction. Mission success probability, 100%. Social reputation damage, 67%. Yeah, he said, smirking despite himself. Feels about right. He shoved the bags into the passenger seat and collapsed into the driver's side, finally breathing like a free man. The hour he'd spent under fluorescent lights and judgmental stares had drained more energy than any firefight. Cortana, remind me to earn enough to outsource humiliation next time. Directive logged. Long-term goal, acquisition of personal assistant, public relations cover identity, and possibly a stylist. Perfect. The dream of every man. As the car pulled out of the garage, he caught his reflection in the rearview mirror, a calm exterior, filled with internal chaos. Somewhere out there, Tony Stark was probably on his fifth espresso, delegating entire empires through voice command. James drove in silence for a while, the city slipping by in polished reflections. The early sunlight flashed across the steering wheel, the world looking deceptively simple for a man who had just wrestled alien tech and a billionaire's ego in the same week. By the time he reached home, he'd regained composure. He parked quietly and stepped inside. The house was peaceful again, morning light filtering through the blinds, faint chatter from the kitchen. Natasha Romanoff was asleep in the guest room. Sure enough, what a woman needed most after an operation gone sideways was rest. Her breathing was even, hair damp from the earlier shower, and body wrapped in the oversized shirt. James set the shopping bags near her bed. He glanced once at the folded clothes, then at her resting form and shook his head. She'd been through enough. Still, he couldn't help the faint smirk. You better appreciate this, he muttered softly. Chapter 129, Initial Scanning. James went back next door. Mindy was watching TV with Annie curled in her arms, the kitten's tail swishing lazily. Quite a sight to not see you playing computer games. James asked. Not a good time yet, Mindy replied without looking away from the TV. There aren't many people online in the morning. We'll play later. Brother, will you still play with me today? Her eyes widened hopefully. James shook his head. Can't. Got something important to do. You go hang out with your classmates today. Promise I'll make time for us to have fun soon. She pouted but nodded, attention already sliding back to the screen. Annie yawned, unbothered by the conversation. James took out his phone and dialed Philip. The man answered within seconds. What are your instructions, boss? Do you know anything about Gilson Marbury? Philip paused, thinking. Yes, boss. A real estate magnate, worth several billion. But he's got a side business not known to the public, illegal arms trades, most of them through offshore accounts. He may keep himself clean on paper but dirty underneath. Good, James said. Send a team to audit his development plan. He just bought land for an apartment project. I've invested $1.5 billion into it. I want the full scale of his investment and the exact shareholding ratios adjusted accordingly. Understood. Anything else? Yeah. I need an assistant stationed in New York. Someone capable of handling most of everything. That last word carried weight. Philip hesitated, picking up the shift in tone. Understood, boss. Where do you want her to be based? Our League Games office in New York. No assigned duties yet, just keep her on standby for my call. Philip didn't press for more answers. He'd learned that when James sounded like this, he was planning for something big. I'll make it happen. The call ended. James leaned back for a moment, rubbing his temples. After yesterday's fiasco in the mall, the idea of a personal assistant didn't feel like a luxury, it was battlefield logistics. Observation, administrative personnel request logged. Efficiency projection increase, 41%. Thanks, Cortana, he muttered. Just make sure she's better at picking clothes than I am. Baseline competency in fashion retail exceeds yours easily by anyone. He snorted. Hey. Well, you ain't lying on that, but it still hurts when you hear that. The ring sat on the table beside him, metallic and ordinary looking. But he could still feel the faint pulse beneath its surface, like a heartbeat muffled through steel. He pocketed it and left again, driving straight toward Stark Tower. Meanwhile, Natasha Romanoff slept until noon. Sunlight spilled across the sheets, and for a moment, she looked nothing like the infamous Black Widow, just a woman caught between exhaustion and stubborn pride. She stretched slowly, yawned, and eventually sat up. Her hair was a tangled mess, her body still sore from the night's mission before. She went to the bathroom, washed her face, then noticed the shopping bags neatly placed nearby. The outer one was wrinkled, crushed from handling. Curious, she opened it and frowned. "Oh, come on," she muttered, pulling out the underwear. "This is vintage?" It wasn't a bad quality, but it looked like something from an era long before her. She sighed, dressing anyway, muttering curses in Russian under her breath for James' selections. Then she saw the coat. Her temper flared instantly. "You've got to be kidding me," she hissed. The design screamed a mature executive, not a top-level assassin. The shoes, thankfully, were better, simple black heels. She slipped them on and checked the mirror. The mismatched combination made her look like an undercover diplomat who'd lost a bet. She stormed out of the room, heels clicking sharply across the floor. The first thing she saw was Mindy sitting cross-legged on the couch, holding Annie and watching something action-packed. "Mindy, where's your brother?" "He went out," the girl said casually. "Didn't he tell you?" "No. I was asleep." "Oh. If you need something, just call him." Mindy turned back to the TV, not paying her any more attention. Natasha blinked at the indifference. A little girl radiating hostility toward her? That was new. She dismissed it, sighing. There were bigger problems, like the old vintage clothes that made her feel like a grandma. Back in her room, she rummaged through her recovered handbag. Picking up her phone, she forgot that she got no number for James. She considered calling S.H.I.E.L.D, then decided against it. It was just clothing, after all. Pride won over irritation barely. Fine. She'd fix it herself. She headed back to the living room. "Mindy, I'm going out. What do you want for lunch?" "I'll pick something up." "No thanks. There's food at home. Hannah leaves it for me every day. It tastes better than takeout." Natasha nodded and left, heels clicking. Mindy watched the door close. Then she looked down at Annie, who blinked up at her with sleepy green eyes. "Annie," she whispered seriously, "Big Brother's ours. We can't let that woman steal him, okay?" "Meow. You agree? Then we'll work hard together." Mindy grabbed Annie and gave her affection for being on her side. James reached Stark Tower and took the secure elevator to the top floor. Tony was already there, glass of wine in hand, city skyline glittering behind him. "About time you show up," Tony said. "You left me waiting." He poured a Coke into a glass and passed it over. James took it, unamused. "Don't even start. I've just endured the worst public humiliation of my life. Buying women's underwear by myself in front of many women, humiliating doesn't begin to cover it." He drank half the glass in one go and gave a massive belch. Tony chuckled. "You finally learned. You may play soldier, but you're still a man with resources, use them. You need staff, you need armor, and sometimes," he said with a grin, "you need someone to buy lingerie for you." "Appreciate the wisdom," James said flatly. Tony's grin widened. "All right, let's talk business." He picked up the metallic ring from James and placed it beneath a lab scanner. "JARVIS, initiate analysis." "Scanning," came the AI's crisp tone. Then, after a few seconds, "Mr. Stark, the ring's composition cannot be analyzed. Energy readings are non-existent." James folded his arms. "Told you so. It's alien. No radiation bleed, no conventionally known signature. It's pure stealth tech. So what do we do, take it apart?" "Not yet." James took the ring, sliding it onto his finger. It contracted instantly, 3 points glowing faintly as it pricked the skin. Biometric link established. Warning, neural handshake requested. "Go ahead," James said quietly. Confirmed. Attempting controlled penetration of data lattice. Tony leaned closer, fascinated. "How's it feeling?" "Like being bitten by a mosquito that costs more than a car," James muttered. A few seconds later, Cortana's voice returned. "Connection stable. Neural link achieved. Internal architecture confirmed. It's a microcontrol system, a digital binary similar to human design. Different code language, but conceptually the same." James relayed some of what Cortana told him, phrasing it like his own observations so Tony wouldn't suspect anything. Tony whistled. "Binary logic in alien tech? Now that's something to be surprised about. You could theoretically sync that with your suit's targeting software." "Can you get a direct proper scan now?" James asked. "Yes, but the system must remain active. Do not remove the ring." I can open the shell protocols manually. Do it. The ring clicked faintly, unfolding just enough for the scanner to catch a glimpse of its inner lattice, a geometric web of microscopic circuits pulsing with light. Tony's eyes gleamed. That's beautiful. Whoever built this wasn't just advanced, they were efficient. No wasted motion and no excess material to it. Confirmed. Structure density surpasses vibranium alloy by 24%. Heat tolerance exceeds known plasma thresholds. James grinned. In plain English? It can survive a laser fire. Chapter 130, Alien Ring Analysis. James stood up and put his hand on top of the lab scanner. JARVIS. One more scan. Yes, Mr. Gibson. JARVIS scanned again. Scan complete. As the scan completed and the holographic image appeared, James removed his hand with the ring. He and Tony Stark could step aside and study the internal structure. I really didn't expect the internal structure of this ring to be this complex, far more optimized and compact than what we had ever made. Tony Stark exclaimed. Yeah. I guess that's what we could expect from a civilization that's possibly already spacefaring. I don't think JARVIS can fully analyze it with its unknown material composition. There is no reference or comparison. We can only study its internal circuitry and the energy architecture. James frowned. Materials mattered a lot. If they could be copied and used, the Umbra Sentinel could be fitted with far better heat and laser-resistant layers. That would change the battlefield dynamics. Yeah, and since I couldn't scan it earlier. Must be some active internal field. I didn't expect tech like this. By the way, when are you going to hand the ring in? Can we study it longer? Tony's eyes brightened. He loved a puzzle and a potential upgrade. I'm not sure. Depends on Natasha's call. For now, let JARVIS run material analysis and compare molecular structures to find candidate substitutes. If the alloy is reproducible, we might have a chance of making hundreds of this ring. James kept his tone level. Priorities first, intel, safety, then patentable materials. JARVIS, run molecular structure analysis, compare affinities, propose replacement materials, and record the ring's internal architecture. Tony tapped commands and reached into the hologram, beginning to peel open virtual layers of the ring. James watched while Cortana began to log every information gained from the ring through the neural link, and the two of them set to work dissecting the model at a microscopic level. Natasha left James's house. The clothes he'd bought that had irritated her for the poor design choice felt better after she swapped out the ill-fitting pieces at the mall. The new set finally made her comfortable. She took a taxi home, adjusting the coat, thinking about the mission and the director's inevitable questions. She pulled out her phone and called Nick Fury directly. Director, the mission's a success, all thanks to James. Fury's voice was flat with curiosity for what could have happened. Tell me the operation in detail. Natasha walked him through the sequence. When she finished, Fury's tone went sharp. Agent Romanoff, you are a senior field operative. How could you let pride take priority over the mission? I told you to move as a team. Personal problems are not grounds for improvisation. If the mission failed, and it nearly did, 2 agents could have been lost, Fury continued. You know the risks. Even if you dislike Agent Gibson, you must follow the plan. That's an order. Natasha listened and then said, Understood, Director. It won't happen again. Fury's rebuke stung, but the logic was unassailable. She put the phone down and breathed out, cooling the anger that had flared toward James. At Stark Tower, James and Tony were finishing lunch. Materials are the sticking point, James said. The internal architecture is nearly mapped. Can we copy the anti-scan field? Tony shook his head. Not fully. This is alien engineering. You can emulate some layers, but the core architecture is baked at a scale our foundries can't see. It's not just metallurgy, it's manufactured at a precision that only unknown energy substrates could make. Still, James persisted, if we can mimic the thermal tolerance and partial stealth, we could adapt it for the Umbra Sentinel and the Iron Man's plating. Also, this neural connection system is tempting. If I could route through it, the response times would be insane. Tony's expression turned cautious. Connecting human nerves directly is a risk. A human isn't an AI. Nerve damage, feedback loops, long-term degradation, these are non-trivial. But JARVIS is faster than human reflexes. You'd be blending machine rhythm with flesh. It's dangerous if anything goes wrong. He was right. James thought of Cortana, a system hosted on hardware that could mitigate damage, and kept his silence. Revealing that he'd reversed engineered the neural link through the neural overlay was not something he could do casually. Cortana's existence was a secret he'd guard. Still, the lab needed to exist. James considered a private facility, discreet, well-funded, with an R&D team under plausible cover. Where to place it would be the next problem. Can you obtain other alien artifacts from S.H.I.E.L.D for comparison? Tony asked. Not easily, James admitted. Even though I got promoted to a level 6, bureaucracy and secrecy have many layers. Fury watches over everything. He won't let us casually access the vaults. Tony snorted. Governments hoard tech until it petrifies. They'd rather file it away than let innovation happen. Fine, we'll do what we can. If anything, we document and reverse engineer what we can. It is what it is, James said. Let's talk about it next time. I'll go back first. Natasha must have reported about the mission already. I'll go back and see if I need to hand in the ring. Anyway, everything that needs to be recorded has been recorded. Now there's only the molecular structure comparison of the materials left. Sure, do that. I'll let you know if I find something out. Tony grinned. And if you want to prototype a suit upgrade, call me. James left Stark Tower and drove home. He found Natasha in the living room watching TV. Mindy was nowhere to be seen. A muffled shout came from a bedroom. You reported it, right? Is the ring going to the precinct or headquarters? Headquarters. When do we go? Natasha's voice replied, impatient. I won't be going. You can go ahead and bring it yourself. Though it would be best for you to wear it, I will teach you how to use it for your own safety.